We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Antry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And Merry Christmas, everybody. This episode should be dropping on Christmas Eve. I think that's how the schedule works out. So, yeah.
Pretty sure.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays, everybody. It's the Christmas season. And just in time, my apartment flooded this week. So that was fun to deal with.
I thought you lived on like a high floor.
I live on the fourth floor. My building is an L shape, so I've got the extended part of the rest of the fourth floor going out beside me, and we've had a bunch of building envelope work being done, but they've paused for winter. And when we had a snowfall with like icy snow, one of the roof drains beside me, apparently there was either a gap there that got opened up with the previous snowfall or whatever. Anyway, water was coming into the building instead of going out of the building. The apartment below me got much more damage than I did. In fact, I didn't really have any damage besides having to take the baseboards off. And thankfully, the water came in like through a column in the middle of my living dining room area, not near any of my equipment, not near anything important, and my flooring is floating laminate, so you can actually like get under it a bit and let it dry out. It's not adhered to the subfloor. So all in all, I got away pretty scot-free, but yeah, that was a fun call to get at 7:45 in the morning while I was at work, and like, hey, we really need to get into your apartment right now, because, it's raining in the apartment below you. So that was my week, but I can't even talk about it further because we got so much to get through this week, and packed show.
I know, we are. And if you've seen the title of the episode, you know what I'm going to talk about right after the bump here. So right. we're gonna do the intro, and then we'll get right into the review.
Cool.
This is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to our website, visit us there. You can look at us at facebook.com/avrantpodcast, where you can respond. Or people have been posting GIFs. I'm not saying GIFs. GIFs. GIF is a type of peanut butter. Anyway, so on our Facebook, but youtube.com/avrant if you want to see our misaligned faces or mistimed lips say these words.
For sure.
And if you want to see what I'm about to talk about, you're going to want to go there, because I'm going to show them in just a second.
That's the main one.
That's the main one. To contact directly, Rob at avrant.com. His Twitter's at FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter is at avrant_Tom. All right. It's listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, you support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to avrant.com and click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. There, it'll send you to a PayPal site where you can give us some money from your PayPal or from your credit card, anonymously if you want, I think. I don't know. Anyways, Chad did that this week, so thank you very much, Chad.
Yeah, Chad, thank you so much for the PayPal donation. We appreciate the financial support. We
do, and if you want to be a ongoing supporter, if you want to support us a little bit every month and you don't want to have to think about it, you can go to patreon.com/avrantpodcast, where you can sign up to become one of our patrons. We currently have 137 as of the end of this month.
Yeah.
137 patrons.
Very nice. Patreon.com/avrantpodcast if you'd like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation, and a big thank you to our 137 patrons over there.
We also got some notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going during the ongoing and soon to be worsening post-Christmas pandemic. Thank you, Omicron. Thanks, Omicron, for ruining it. No one invited you. We didn't invite you.
Get vaccinated, get boosted. You still might catch it, but you likely won't go to hospital if you are vaccinated and boosted. So,
anyways, we got some notes of gratitude. So James sent us one. He also recommended the Cycling Dads podcast. He thinks the hosts are similar to us, and he finds them very entertaining, unlike all the other cycling podcasts he's tried. I have listened to it.
Oh, okay.
I have broken my long streak of not listening to podcasts for like 10 years or more, especially our own.
You were there.
Especially.
Why listen to it?
I had to listen to it. I actually watched us on YouTube one time with my kids because we were talking about something, and I don't know, they found it interesting. So I did listen to it. Yeah, the first couple episodes were rough.
Okay.
The sound quality is also, one of them has a much better mic than the other,
Okay.
and either a better room or a better setup.
But you went like
than
all the way
other
back
one.
to their early episodes though, so.
Oh yeah, I'm not started.
Oh,
They
okay.
only have like 26 episodes.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's not like
it's
there's
relatively
that many.
new then.
Yes, it started during the pandemic, or
Okay.
right around that time. So yes, I have listened to a couple of them. There's the one that's a little bit meaner than the other one. I guess that's the one that's supposed to be like me. He's like Canadian mean though.
Okay.
He's not like they're from Minnesota, so it's
yeah.
like it's basically
Pretty
Canada.
close.
And so they I'm like, oh, he's being mean, I think, and the other guy gets flustered the way that you get flustered
Nice.
sometimes when I say something really, really off kilter. Except that he's not really that mean. I'm always like, what is that other guy getting all upset about? I'm like, okay, so it must have. I will say this: if I have one comment for their podcast, they assume that their listeners know way more than I do about cycling. Like they have a bunch of like acronyms and jargon that they use that I have no idea what they're talking about, especially when it comes to Zwift, which is a indoor cycling program that people use. My wife was asking me about it because they started talking about XP, and she's like, I know what XP is, but why are they talking about it? So I had to explain it to her. But yeah, it's Cycling Dad's podcast. Seems pretty nice. Basically their format is they interview a cycling professional from the Minnesota area. So it's kind of location specific as of the 8 or so episodes I've listened to so far.
All right.
So Julian also just found our podcast a few weeks ago, and he's glad he did. We really help on his hour-and-a-half commute. Dude, hour-and-a-half commute is too much. I'm just gonna tell you.
That's long.
Yeah. Shawn needed an emergency 65-inch TV recommendation for under $1,000, and Rob came through via email. So Merry Christmas, Shawn says, I guess, to himself or to us. I don't know. Jason said thank you. Dan says, here's to hoping 2022 will be better than 2021.
Fingers crossed.
We are hoping. Chad and Gurinder agrees with Tom that a traditional couch is better than a theater recliners. Plus, if your theater is soundproof, there's a couch in there, it's a great place for a nap. You ain't lying, Hoss. It does get hot in there, though. And also David. So let's go through those names again. James, Julian, Shawn, Jason, Dan, Chad, Gurinder, and David. So thank you for thanking us.
And you'll hear it one more time from my mouth. James, Julian, Shawn, Jason, Dan, Chad, Gurinder, and David. Thank you all so much for sending in the notes of gratitude to us for keeping the podcast going. A big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions. And I just saw Tom reach down, so it must be time for a quick review.
It's time.
Hopefully it goes quick.
It will be quick. It will be quick. There is going to be the full review just went live on AV Gadgets, so you can read it over there. But I wanted to talk about a little bit on the podcast. These are the Monoprice Monolith planar magnetic headphones. They are $399 a pair, which is pretty inexpensive for planar magnetics. It's not like the cheapest you can find, but it's pretty dang close. They are, as you can, actually I keep hitting my mic, so I'm sorry about that, guys, but I'm going to put them on real quick. I won't be able to hear Rob anymore.
There go the Oppo
okay.
headphones, and Tom can't hear what I'm saying, but there he goes.
Cycling Dad's podcast, that's how you undercut somebody else. Anyway, so if you see them on my face, as you can see them on YouTube right now, the ear cups are comically large. they are ridiculously large. I'm putting them, I gotta put my headphones back on so I can listen to Rob. But they are insanely large. There is
it's a bit of a Mickey Mouse look by the time you get those put on your head there. Yeah,
you feel a little bit like what Princess Leia must have felt like when she has those buns. They are open back. There's the closed back version too, but the ones I reviewed are open back. They have a metal grill on the back. They're a little heavy. They're 1.25 pounds, a little over 500 grams for those of you in the metric system. So they're not light. I mean, sound wise, I compared them to the Oppo PM2s. These are the PM3s I'm wearing right now, but there's a closed back. The open back PM2s are functionally identical to the $1,100 PM1s, except they had like downgraded aesthetics. So they sold for $700 when they sold. So, but in the insides of the PM2s are identical to the PM1. So if you say basically those are $1,100 planar magnetic headphones, which I compared these to. These sound more similar than dissimilar to those. Okay. These have a weirdly intimate sound. I used that word a couple times in the review, and I don't know how else to describe it, but the sound from these headphones sounds very close to you. It does not sound far away. You know, it doesn't sound like the soundstage isn't like way into the room. It sounds like it's right near you, but not inside your head necessarily, but very, very close. Then because of these big old ear cups on here, it kind of muffles the outside sound a little bit more than I was used to with an open back headphone, which was kind of nice. I think that kind of lends to that more intimate sound. The instruments with the PM2s, the Oppos, were, I mean, you could definitely tell a difference between how the detail in the like the instruments. If you listen to like just like a snare drum beat and some of that, and I used Chesky's Ultimate headphone disc to do the comparison because it has like binaural recordings and a bunch of very very carefully recorded instruments. So listening with these was great. Listening with the PM2s, you're like, yeah, I can see why these cost a little bit more and almost double more, or a little bit more than double more. No, about a little bit, almost double more. So you could see, but it wasn't like I was going, these are definitely worth twice as much. So these are really good headphones. They are a little bit heavy. I found, a lot of people, when I looked at the reviews online, they're like, oh no, the headband takes most of the weight. I didn't have any problems with them for long listening. I did. For after a couple of hours, my ears started to hurt, so I had to take them off. But you may have a different experience. $400. I really liked them. There's a lot of good things with them as far as planar magnetics go. They're not that expensive, and I drove them with my phone. I used the Emotiva Stealth DC1, which is a headphone amp and DAC and everything else, to drive them for the review. But I also tried them with my phone. I tried them directly plugged in my computer. Sounded fine. They got plenty loud, so it's not like you need to have a headphone amp for these things. So I was impressed. I thought they were good headphones. So they're the Monoprice Monolith M1070 open back planar magnetic. So check them out.
Cool.
In the news, Audyssey and Sound United, Denon and Marantz released Audyssey MultEQ-X, and I reported on it. I was literally writing the report on it as I was sitting in the Zoom call, or it wasn't a Zoom call. It was basically a Zoom call. And I went through and kind of, there was more information in the Zoom call than I put into the article, because I thought that a lot of that stuff, they were really talking to custom installers and people like that more than they were talking to the common user. So that's an important thing, but it is available to anybody.
Yeah,
so,
it's available to any consumers. It's not like hidden behind you have to have a special,
license
calibrator,
or
professional or whatever. But it is more or less attempting to be a replacement for Audyssey Pro, which has gone away. Yeah. So if you think of it more in that context, some of the stuff that we're about to detail isn't quite as much of a turn-off, to hint a little bit what I felt just as a consumer. But we'll dig into all the stuff here.
Yeah, so this thing gives you the ultimate power over your Audyssey your Audyssey,
with a few shortcomings that'll maybe get corrected in the future.
Yeah, and there's always gonna be stuff. So these guys, like Rob said, they were trying to, and with the main programmer was on, basically part of the Skype call, and you could tell them this was a labor of love for this guy. This is what he wanted, and these are all the things he thinks are important. Doesn't necessarily mean that's
they were clearly working within the existing framework. This was definitely not a ground-up project. This wasn't reimagining Audyssey from a blank sheet of paper and let's redo it. This was definitely, here is what we have, and let's maximize what we can do within what exists, but there are some limitations that will.
So anyways, let me read what Rob wrote here so that we can get into this. So it's a Windows program available through the Microsoft Store that expands the information and capabilities provided by Audyssey MultEQ and Denon and Marantz receivers and pre-pros. It will function with any models, this is important, any models that can use the Audyssey Editor app. So if your receiver, no matter what level of receiver it is, no matter if it's entry, towards the entry level or the highest end, if you can get the editor app to work with your receiver,
that's right,
this will work. Okay, and you can download the software and go through its interface on a virtual Denon's S750H for free. So you can download it. You can start playing around with this. To
see everything it can do.
Yeah, you can see what it can do on this fake Denon. But if you want to use it, the MultEQ-X with your receiver, you have to log into a Microsoft account and purchase a license for $200, and that's per person per receiver. So your account will be linked to that receiver, and if you sell that receiver, unless you give your Microsoft account information to the person you sold the receiver to, they will have to buy it again for their Microsoft account for that receiver. Okay, that license cannot be transferred to any other owner. It is only good for that one specific receiver. If your receiver happens to get damaged or has a malfunction and needs to be replaced, you can contact Audyssey customer support and have the license transferred to the replacement only.
And
okay?
for you as the owner.
Yeah, as the owner. Yeah. For those $200, the standard features are: you start with an on-screen graph to help you adjust your subwoofer's volume dial. If you have ever run Audyssey before, you plug in your thing, it'll tell you to turn, play a sound through your subwoofers, and it'll tell you to adjust the subwoofer sound up or down until it gets green. And now you can actually see real time how loud it is. Yeah. So, which is, I guess, a feature. You can measure in up to 32 microphone positions, although in the manual it stated that there isn't much point going beyond 10. You can view every individual measurement as well as an aggregate graph for each speaker channel. Okay, that's going to be important. I'm going to keep reading these, but that's going to be important later on.
Okay.
You can redo any measurement. One speaker at one mic position. You can exclude individual measurements from the aggregate that's used to calculate the actual filters. This is what I was going to
honestly, that's
about.
The killer feature of this. This is the killer feature.
This is it. So what you can do is you can see your aggregate, and you can see as the aggregate's going around. If you put in a mic measurement and suddenly your aggregate gets weird, or something strange happens, you can go back to that mic measurement and say, you know what, exclude this one. A truck drove by, or it's right next to a wall, or I put it too close to something, or something happened to make that mic measurement bad.
If you do the thing we say not to do and actually put it in every seat,
right?
Which their own manual is clearer than it has ever been about how they recommend positioning the microphone for each of the microphone positions to take measurements. But if you ignore that and you actually just put the microphone in every seat, you can see on the aggregate, and then you can choose to exclude that one measurement that was an outlier and messed everything up. So that's good.
Right.
Yeah, that's
I
the
really
killer
like.
feature for sure.
That's the feature I really like. I don't. Yeah. The thing is though, I know me, and I ain't gonna ever use it. Right. I am never going to go in here and look at this stuff. I could do it like if I was you, and I'm saying you, the listener, who owns a receiver and sets their stuff up once and it doesn't change it for 10 years or 5 years or something. Knock yourself out. I think I would do it, and then I would never do it again. But with me, I just know I'm going to have to change it in a month or two, and I can't be bothered. So there's the wide variety. Did I skip anything? Nope. I didn't, right? There are a wide variety of filters you can use to adjust the target curve of any speaker pair to your liking. Okay? So the only speaker you can adjust by itself, of course, is the center, or I guess the subs. But you can't like take your left speaker and adjust it differently than your front right speaker. Or if you have, say you have some sort of frequency system where you have your left surround is different than your right surround, you have to EQ them as a pair. Each filter gets its own tab that can be adjusted or removed. You can change both the Audyssey reference and the flat target curves, which is interesting because even with a button press on your remote, you can A/B two different EQs that you have set up yourself.
Right. Yeah.
Not reference, not whatever Audyssey has done. You can change the crossover slope of any speaker pair in the center. You can view an overlay graph of the aggregate measurements plus the filter that's going to be applied based on your target curve plus the predicted after results, which they have promised. If you take a microphone and you put it in your main seat and you measure, that's the measurement you will get, is what they have promised during that thing.
That's still a little bit iffy, but they're not taking a physical after measurement, so this is the prediction.
Yeah. You can curtain off the lowest and highest frequencies that are EQ'd. You can adjust your trim, distance, and bass management settings. You can select which Audyssey features dynamic volume, EQ, low frequency containment are on or off, and their level, which of course you can do from the receiver level, so it's not really that important. Then transfer your completed Audyssey configuration to your network connected receiver and save the configuration file on your computer to readjust or re-upload it anytime. You can also send it to other people, and they can.
It's just a file on your computer.
Yeah. But the way that works is a little bit weird. Like if you have a target curve that you want to share with somebody, so you can share your measurements and everything, and they can see it. That's not a problem. But if they want to use your target curve, you can send them the target curve that you have used for your system, and then they can use it in their Audyssey system. But to do that, they have to do it at the beginning. They have to upload the target curve first and then run on all the measurements. So they can't run all the measurements and then upload the target curve.
You can open an existing session. So you would open the existing session that's already got the target curve that you created, but then they would have to do their own set of measurements. So the file that you send to them would include your measurements, but they can go in there, erase all those, and then do their own measurements and still retain the target curve that you created.
Right.
Yeah.
So the drawbacks here. We've already mentioned the restrictive licensing terms. If you sell your receiver, MultEQ-X is gone, the new owner doesn't get it, and you can't keep it and transfer it to your new upgrade. It's one license for one receiver and one for one owner, and that's it.
Yep.
I do think that's restrictive. I think the price is very high. I think that there's a reason for all of that. I don't know that allowing you to transfer it around and all this other stuff would just become a logistical nightmare on their end. So I understand why they're doing that. Yeah, the price is quite high. I don't know if it's going to.
To me, I honestly think at some point they're going to change this. I really disliked their sort of because they're becoming quickly aware that the majority of consumers are not happy with the licensing restrictions. That we feel it's a bit too restrictive, and their initial response was, well, it could have been worse. I mean, in not so many words. So I wasn't a fan of that response of like, well, it could have been a subscription or the price could have been even higher. I'm like, nah, that's not really the best way to respond to that. I think what they should do is copy what Calman has done with their licensing for Calman software. In that one, because one of the things that they stressed about why they chose this licensing structure is they said they will never charge you for an upgrade or an update to MultEQ-X. As long as you have that receiver and this license, as long as they're doing upgrades and updates to this software, you just get them. So they're not going to, time that out or parcel that out or anything. I think what Calman does with their licensing structure, I think Calman's licensing structure for consumers is right on the edge of being a little too restrictive, but it's just good, and I think that's why they should copy it. And in their structure, you buy the software, use it as much as you want, but you get upgrades for 1 year, and after that, if you want the newest upgrade, and they do upgrade the software every year, then you've got to pay again. And I think that works better because this, to me, is a disincentive to buy a new Denon receiver, right? If I bought a receiver and I bought MultEQ-X and I'm like, oh, I'd really like to upgrade to the new model that just came out, but I'm going to have to buy MultEQ-X again. I'm like, that's silly. Why disincentivize me? Why not lock me in and say, hey, I already paid $200 for MultEQ-X. My next receiver better also be a Denon or a Marantz so that I can keep using it. I think that is more of an incentive on the consumer front. But whatever, that's my criticism of it. I don't particularly like it, but that's the business side. They can change that if they want to. That's not the software that, that would have to be rebuilt or anything.
And they're going to do what they're going to do, and they're going to decide whatever makes sense for them fiscally and from the business end, as well as making sure that this thing is used, or like Rob says, it incentivizes people to buy a Denon. One of the reasons why people like Drac is Drac has a lot more control than Audyssey does, and this kind of answers that question. But for $200, it doesn't really answer it all that well, at least in my mind. Now, if they start including it with your AV receiver, if that's part of buying a Denon or a Marantz, then all of a sudden
that's not going to happen. And I'm fine with it being an add-on. I'm even fine with a $200 price tag. I just think that when I get my next Denon, let's say even if it's like within a year, or the license is good for 2 units. What if I own more than I do own more than one Marantz receiver in my house? I've got to pay $200 for each of them if I want the same features. So yeah, I think they got to change that. But I think maybe they could.
So other downsides: you cannot use your own microphone. At launch, MultEQ-X only supports the ACM1H, which is the mic that comes with every Denon Marantz receiver. The mic still needs to be plugged in the receiver itself, so you still need a mono 3.5 millimeter extension cord if your receiver is far away or in a different room. No plugging in a USB mic into your laptop. It does also support the mic that comes with the Pro kit.
Not yet. They said it will.
Or it's going to. It's going to. That's right. But, it's going to. They said they intend to make the old Audyssey Pro mic compatible with a future update and cable. I think a cable is required. Right. There's also where they're working on a higher-end consumer mic. But in all instances, the mic plugs into the receiver itself. That is also true.
And I'll give you one guess as to what the price of the consumer mic will be, because it seems as though $200 is the only add-on price that Denon knows how to charge.
Okay. Well, that is true. I don't know how much that cable is going to be. Probably $50, I would suppose. The other thing is that cable, soon to be $50 cable, is also up to or allows you to extend the mic distance from the receiver up to 1 kilometer.
Is that? Yeah.
I was like,
It sounds like a joke.
I thought it was a joke. I thought they were joking when they said it on the thing, but they were dead serious. Like those guys didn't really seem to know how to make jokes. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't think that they knew how to do it. Like, you ever been in a room with engineers and they say something they think is funny? Everybody looks around like, wait, was that the joke? Did I miss it? And that's kind of how
that's honestly long enough that you could start running into cable resistance problems. So I don't know what's going on with that, but
I don't know. I guess the thought process there is that if you are in a multi-room mansion and you have an AV equipment closet way down in the basement, and you snake it up like stairs and everything else up to the other side of the house and the top floor for the home theater, maybe you would lead something that long, but I can't. I don't know. That's just ridiculous. And lastly, the Audyssey algorithms haven't changed. They're still the same filters that have been in your receiver all along. It's just easier to view individual measurements and manually adjust things more granularly. Fundamentally, it's still the same Audyssey, which means your level of Audyssey did not get any better with MultEQ-X purchase.
That's right.
Okay, whatever level of Audyssey you have the same number of filters, you have the same power, you have the same room correction ability. You just can control it more finely and see what's going on more easily.
That's right.
For $200.
Yeah.
So
yep, definitely for pros or enthusiasts only. The one other thing is this does not give you independent equalization for two subwoofers. It's still, you can have independent distance and trim levels for the two subs, just like you still do under sub EQ HT, but it is a single equalization curve that is applied to both subwoofers together. So this did not give you fully independent subwoofers either.
Okay. HDMI licensing, this is a different thing, okay? Yep. We're on to other news. HDMI licensing has made the decision to declare that HDMI 2.0 no longer exists. Instead, they've decided that what used to be HDMI 2.0 is now just a subset of HDMI 2.1. In a move that I've seen people report on, I've seen the headlines, and I go, and my brain just said, I'm not even dealing with that. Like, my own website has not touched this at all. AV Gadgets has not touched this because I'm like, this is so fundamentally stupid that either it is being misreported, or they're going to quickly backtrack on this nonsense. So I am learning about it at the same time you are, because I refuse to read the articles about it. I have no idea what this is about. I just saw the headlines and went, I mean, HDMI is they are the gift. Remember when the Reed Hastings of Netflix kept saying stupid stuff for like a year? I feel like that's been HDMI from the beginning. Like, every time they open their mouths, you're like, oh my God, HDMI, you were drunk.
They have a concept of how they want it to go, and they are digging their heels in further than ever.
Yeah. All right. So it's not, according to Rob here, now it's not quite the case that without doing anything and without adding any new features or functionality, your 18 gigabits per second HDMI connection that cannot do 4K 120 or 8K 60 or VRR or ALLM or even eARC. Okay, those are variable refresh rate, auto low latency mode, and enhanced
audio return channel,
are now officially an HDMI 2.1 port. It isn't yet. In order for a manufacturer to slap HDMI 2.1 on the box, the product has to be certified by HDMI LLC. But the product can be HDMI 2.1 certified so long as it supports any of the features listed under the HDMI 2.1 spec. And the HDMI 2.1 spec now includes everything that used to be HDMI 2.0. So 2.1 and 2.0 are the same. So 3D, that's an HDMI 2.1 feature now. Isn't that great? For Rob, it is. According to HDMI licensing, all of the features that we used to associate with a HDMI 2.1 spec are completely optional. And this is what I have read as well, and it's very stupid. They want manufacturers to list each and every feature that's supported rather than just relying on the HDMI spec numbers as a form of shorthand. They claim this will reduce confusion. Yes, let me tell you about reducing confusion. Okay. You make things less confusing. That's how you do it. You don't put a bunch of stuff on a box that no one understands except for me and Rob, and I only understand it half the time. Okay? Half the time I'm like, what was that again? Let me text Rob.
Do you really think that if you are allowed to put HDMI 2.1 on an 18 gigabit per second product, that a manufacturer is not going to do that? I mean, of course they are, because literally the number is higher, and in consumers' minds, the higher number must be better. They will list all
the stuff it can do too. They will list it in the very fine print on the back bottom corner of the box. I mean,
they're still going to say it can do 4K. They're still going to say it can do 120 hertz, albeit at 1080 or 1440 and not 4K. But it can still do it.
They will be right next to each other on the bullet point list.
There's nothing technically wrong about doing that. And I mean, then, we'll link to Vincent Tio's video on this on HDTV Test, because as always, he's very, very granular and into the nitty gritty of it. But he's like, yeah, basically HDMI's policing strategy for this is have consumers tell on manufacturers who don't adhere. Oh, that's going to work like a charm. So this is horrible.
I am telling you, I am ignoring this until it goes away. There's no way that this can stay this way. It's so dumb as to be untenable.
HDMI has always, they've never wanted the spec numbers on boxes. That has always been their stance. They do not want the spec numbers on the box. They've always wanted the individual features listed. And now they've done this, which... yeah, to make it less confusing, absolutely not. And I'll grant you, it was never correct to use the spec number as shorthand. Putting HDMI 2.1 didn't mean that you automatically had variable refresh rate or even eARC or something like that. But by and large, in the past, HDMI 2.1 meant that you had at least 40 gigabits per second of bandwidth. That was really the key thing that we were using as the shorthand between 2.0 and 2.1. Now you don't even have to have that, and you can still put 2.1 on the box as long as you get it recertified, because you have one of the features that is under the 2.1 spec, which is inclusive of everything that used to be 2.0. So, not going to be difficult to get certified. Crazy.
I'm just so disappointed.
Yup.
Just so incredibly disappointed with how they have handled this. I mean, HDMI, what are you guys even doing over there? Like, how do your board meetings go? Who is a part of the decision-making process is what I want to know. I would like to be, to quote Hamilton, in the room where it happens just one time so that I can see how, like, the Byzantine labyrinth of logic that you must go through in order to get to the end. And this is where you all go, you know what? You nailed it.
Right.
Let's do that. It's like every time with you guys. All right, December 17th came and went, and Disney and Google failed to reach an agreement to keep all the Disney-owned TV channels, such as ABC, ESPN, FX, and many others on YouTube TV. Subscribers were promised a $15 a month reduction in the subscription fee until a new contract was reached. So on December 18th, all of those channels vanished from YouTube TV. But on December 19th, they reached a new deal. Yeah, who would have guessed?
It took a day.
One day of people complaining. And so now all Disney-owned TV channels are back, and the subscription price for YouTube TV remains at $65 a month. And even though the channel outage only lasted one day, Google is still giving all YouTube TV subscribers the $15 credit. If you were in the process of canceling, but you decided to come back, you still get the one-time $15 credit. So, yeah.
So I will say, good on Google for that. I think that's pretty consumer-friendly.
They have all the money.
They have all the money.
They have all the money. What do they care?
But still, that's, at least... I'm looking for some positive news here, because I wasn't super positive on either of the previous two stories. So there you go.
I don't know. The MultEQ-X is another thing that I really think is just going to work itself out one way or the other. As far as the pricing structure and everything else, they announced it. I was like, yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it to almost anybody. Anybody who really wants it, you're not gonna. You don't need me to make a recommendation or not. For anybody who's a little bit on the fence and they're like, should I maybe do this? Just stick with the app. Honestly, everything you need to be able to do is in the app. I would love for the crossover slope adjustment to be added to the app, because I don't see any technical reason why it can't be, and that is a feature I would like to have. But other than that, and that isn't worth $200 versus $20.
Right.
So honestly, if you have any question about should I be looking at MultEQ-X, should I be paying the $200 for it? My answer, if you need to ask, is no. Just go get the $20 app.
You should be able to look around your room and know whether or not you're going to this app is for you. Yeah. You should be able to look at
the people who are on
the
this,
preamps and the microphones and the mini DSPs and the Ruby Wizard tutorial that you printed out so that you can actually scroll through. Yeah. That's,
the people for whom it's for, they're like, yes, this is what I want. Here's my $200, and they did not have to ask AVRant about it.
They already paid. Paid. So comments from listeners. Jay forwarded a post from Steve Yedlin. in which he argues that shooting movies at high frame rates has several drawbacks, such as making it way harder to shoot slow motion and taking up way more storage and bandwidth. He argues that for anyone who prefers the high frame rate look, using frame interpolation on the display makes more sense. Jay just thought it was an interesting take. Okay.
That's fine. He wanted to share it. Feel free to peruse the article. I disagree. I say shoot the movies at 120 or even higher. And if you need slow motion, make them even faster. We've got cameras that shoot over 1,000 frames per second now. I think they can do it.
I think they can do it. Nathan has a couple of comments. First, he heard Rob express some concern about the dimensions of the Monoprice Monolith in-wall speakers and how they might be a little bit too big for a standard 2x4 framing, 16-inch on center. But he's pretty sure that Monoprice is quoting the dimensions that include the front face of the speaker, the part that will be embedded in the half-inch of drywall, but doesn't actually need to go within the studs. So a little bit of extra width and depth are okay, and the speakers are designed to just fit within standard framing. So
cool.
Yeah, okay,
makes sense.
Whatever. Second, we suggested a few places to go for consultation last week. He's hired someone through Lion AV before, and overall I found them to be a good outfit, but it really depends on exactly which person ends up coming to your house because it depends on your region, and not all calibrators and consultants are equal. He also suggested both PMI and Acoustic Frontiers, although they tend to be towards the more expensive end of things, and Elite Home Cinema, who also run the Home Theater Guru's YouTube channel, offer a one-page design service with detailed notes between $500 and $1,000. So if you're looking for some other
additional resources to help you plan your theater, then those are coming from Nathan. And I thank you for contributing.
Thank you, Nathan. Brad just wanted to share the progress he's made on his conversion of his old garage, now replaced by a new 2-car edition. We're actually not seeing the majority of the work that he's done, since that was fully gutting and redoing the guest room, which now has all the furniture that used to be stored in the garage space. So whatever, I don't know what that means. He took down the tracks for the garage door, and since that door will never be opened again, he also put up about 30 structural lag bolts into it. It does not vibrate anymore, and will not be a problem when the bass starts thumping, he hopes. He's put up a framing to conceal the garage door on the inside, and it's exciting to see this room start to come together. So yes, he has put there was the old garage door, then he built a wall in front of it, basically. That's what has happened here. So
congrats on the progress. It is fun and exciting. It
is fun. All right. I actually, at some point when you're answering something I don't care about, I'm going to go get some more coffee, because I've only had one cup and I'm fading here. Errol, which, by the way, bold name choice from your parents. Errol, if you're not in fencing, you should be. Errol has been listening to the HD guys for a few years now. He didn't know about AVRant. What? We were a podcast with them last year. Anyways, they don't talk about us. We don't. I guess we don't.
We get mentioned sometimes, but if you weren't like actively looking.
Yeah, but thanks to the Thanksgiving crossover episode, he's a new listener, and he can't believe he was missing out on a weekly 2-hour discussion about all things home theater this whole time.
Well, welcome. There's a backlog if you'd like.
Yeah, there's a couple extra episodes if you want to get. If you're just dying to waste some time. In his previous setup, he was using a BenQ projector, didn't have any motorized lens capabilities or lens memories, but despite that, he still went with an ultra-wide screen, and he would get up on a step ladder to manually change the lens position and focus. Truly a poor man's constant image height setup. I mean, not poor, like,
but compared to the fancy motorized sled and all of that type of stuff.
Right. But now he has moved, and for the time being, he's stuck watching a 50-inch 16:9 TV, and he can just barely stand it. You gotta sit real close, my friend. I go to my brother-in-law's house every once in a while, and they sit like 12 feet away from a 50-inch screen, and it's purgatorial. I'm like, they're watching football and they can't, like, what's the score? I'm like, I can't see the score. I got to get up to go see the score. My eyes are not as what they used to be. But now he has moved, and for the time, I already said that. Not just for the much smaller size, but the black bars on the top and bottom really bother him. For some reason, pillar box bars on the left and right don't face him at all. And he is a big fan of the movie era when lots of ultra-wide formats were being tried. Todd AO.
Yeah, Todd AO. That was a format.
I don't remember that one.
Cinerama,
the original Cinescope, and Panavision stuff. And since he was used to his old setup having a regular TV shows appear larger than classic ultrawide movies just feels totally wrong to him. For the foreseeable future, a projection setup isn't going to be in the cards, but a larger TV is a possibility. He recalls how there were a couple of 21:9 aspect ratio TVs that were briefly on the market, but it seems like they disappeared about 10 years ago. You can still find them in computer monitors. I have one. That said, ultrawide computer monitor. I'm sorry, I should have just read. Ultrawide computer monitors still seem to be the rage these days. So, do we think a 21:9 TVs might make a comeback? No. If not, what's the solution for someone like him? He even wrote to some TV manufacturers and they replied with a "stay tuned," which is code for "shut up." But that doesn't exactly tell him much. So, what are our thoughts? Rob really feels your pain here. I think more so than I do. So I agree. It is very annoying. And I remember back to my CRT days where, I would buy the widescreen version of Jurassic Park or whatever it was, and there was just so much black space, and it felt like you were looking
we had 4:3
at
aspect TVs.
Yeah, so you're looking at such a small area of the screen.
I remember watching Ben-Hur on a 4:3 television in proper. Right. I mean, it was mostly black bars at that point because that is a very wide movie.
So I mean, I kind of feel where you're coming from there. I think that, unfortunately, going forward, and we kind of talked about this on the Thanksgiving episode, I think.
A little bit.
I think going forward that 16:9 or very close to that is going to be the screen size you're going to want no matter what. And the reason is because aspect ratios, I think, are becoming part of the storytelling mechanism.
A little bit more so, yeah. Like we're seeing a lot of 2.0 to 1 on streaming now. That's becoming very common, is 2.0 to 1. Yeah.
So I think your solution is just to get a bigger, at least for now, is just to get a bigger 16:9 TV. And I don't know why the black bars on the side don't bother you, because they bother me just as much as the black bars on the top and bottom. But they're 21:9 screens for consumer home use is just not. It's not going to be a thing.
Like, you could get a 21:9 monitor and sit real close to it because they aren't right. They're going to. They're the 34-inch size is the most common. Yeah. And I think there's some 40-something inch 21:9s, or in fact, they might even be the 32:9s that become the 40-something inch screens. So.
He might be the perfect candidate for an ultra short throw projector though too, but those are going to be 16:9 and they're going to be maximum 120 inch. So. I don't know that that's really the solution you want, but at least it would get you a very big screen, and you wouldn't have to have a true projector setup the way that a traditional projector would be set up.
To me, if you're mostly watching movies on this, mostly watching not even just widescreen, but ultra widescreen movies on this, like getting yourself an oversized OLED would be because then the black bars aren't going to bother you. The black bars are just as black as the black bezel. So, an OLED can do that for you, but it doesn't solve the issue of then when you switch to regular television, the television image is larger than your movie image. Yeah. And that is the thing where, like, I go a step beyond constant image height. The people who think I don't like constant image height, it's not that I don't like constant image height, it's that I go one step beyond it. I want my television to be 16:9 and the size that I want, about a 32-degree field of view. Then I want my CinemaScope movies to be the same height but even wider. That is what I want. So that is the constant image height thing. Then I go one step even further and I say, well, I also want IMAX to be even larger than CinemaScope. That's what I want. So I'm back to my 16:9 screen, but now it's the same width as my CinemaScope screen, which was the same height as what I want for HD TV, right? So
you're back to black bars. No matter how you look at it, you're back to black bars.
No matter what, I'm back to, and in fact, when I'm watching television on that, I would have black bars on all four sides. It's a smaller 16:9 image inside of a much bigger 16:9 display. That would be how that's 4-way motorized.
And I think that's insane.
Sure, so but I just don't want television to be bigger than movies. So I'm basically on board, and then I go a step further. He's like, I don't care about IMAX, so I'll stop at constant image height. I'm not against that. That's fine. That makes sense. You know what you like. As far as manufacturers telling you to stay tuned, I think that's them hinting at the modular displays, because that is something you can do with the modular displays. Sure. Is build yourself an ultra wide display. But we're not going to be at flat panel prices for that in this year, in 2022. Hopefully prices will be lower than they've been for Samsung's The Wall and LG's modular micro LED display, but they're not going to be down to, thousands of dollars. We're still going to be talking high tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I believe that's probably what they were talking about when they say stay tuned, because that is an option with the modular displays. So honestly, I don't have a fantastic solution for you. I agree with Tom. I think ultra short throw might be the best you can do. You can still get yourself a CinemaScope screen and then just make sure above and below the screen is black so that you're not distracted by the light being thrown above and below the screen. You could still do that.
Karl, even more planning for Karl's detached garage, the Vanta Black Theater. That's the one I thought we were talking about before, but we're not.
Different.
We didn't. This is the one that's above a garage, and he wants to paint it as black as possible so that it can scare the next owners of the house. Karl's wife, E, just a letter, not like, I don't know.
That's what she goes by.
Not her actual name. Is definitely digging the idea of all speakers being in walls, keeping the look of the room super slick, and everything that isn't Musso black being hidden behind super black fabric. But what about subwoofers? And also, Karl likes the idea of going for front wides, but Rob cautioned that he strongly feels that they need to go at exactly plus or minus 60 degrees and be angled towards the seats. Normal subs and those front wide speakers would be protrusions into the room. One option would be false walls with stretched fabric to hide everything, but that would mean the actual room would need to be even larger. So any suggestions for in-wall subwoofers that would not be a compromise for performance? And what do we think about of trying to make a box within a box so that maybe regular speakers can be used and everything is just hidden behind false walls? You can definitely do that last one. I mean, that's
if
done
you're
all the
allowed
time.
to build the room this size. He was saying originally there are like zoning restrictions on how big this detached garage should be. When you're talking now about making the room, let's say 2 feet bigger in every dimension so that you can have these false walls with fabric over them, like, I think you're just getting up against the limits of what you're even allowed to build. Okay.
And there are in-wall subwoofers. I think in-wall subwoofers are, and I wrote an article, I don't think I published it yet, but maybe I did, are always a compromise. And and then the reason being, even though that we know that if you have a rectangular room and you put them in the specific locations, that's going to be the best locations for them. But you now have put something in your wall that a subwoofer in particular can be problematic to get back out again. These things are, I mean, a speaker, you can almost always just detach it and take it out and replace it with something else. An in-wall subwoofer is often built behind the drywall, and up into the bay because it needs all that space. It's not just a driver and then using the wall behind it. It's often an enclosure that's installed into the wall. I have a lot of reservations about in-wall subwoofers, and their performance almost always isn't even close to what you can get with a freestanding sub, and they cost order of magnitude more. So my solution for this would be, if you're draping black cloth over things to make them look clean, just buy the subwoofer you want that will destroy this room, shove it in the corner and throw some black fabric over it and call it a day.
Like, I'm definitely picturing a cylinder subwoofer, and maybe not even standing up. Maybe it is lying down in the front edge of your theater below your screen. And we talked about going acoustically transparent last week, so you will have some space below there. You're not taking up where the center speaker would go, and then you cover that cylinder subwoofer up there with fabric, the same fabric that you're using everywhere that you can't paint Musso black. I'm more in favor of doing that. But that said, if the design ends up being that this has to be in wall, one option is actually to go in ceiling or in floor. Those are the types of in construction subwoofers that RBH offers. So like their SI 1010, I think it's spec'd down to 25 or 28 or something like that, minus 3 dB. So it is.
I am not building a home theater that is going to be Musso black.
Right.
And only getting down to 25, 28 hertz. It's not that, it does not compute. My brain is smoking right now. There is no way I am only going down to 28 hertz.
Honestly, that's one of the better options out there.
Yes.
The other better option that's out there is from JL Audio, their Fathom 213 in-wall system, and that is two 13-inch drivers in two enclosures. That is one system, and you would need two of those to have the actual.
That's probably
dual
cheap too, because
subwoofer setup.
JL Audio is definitely your budget leader when it comes to subwoofers.
Right, yeah. Nah, but I mean, the performance is there, but even they spec, I think it was 23 hertz as the minus 3 dB point, because even they have limitations when you're building the thing into the wall, and they are an in-wall design, not really meant to go in ceiling or in floor with the JL Audios. One other potential option, which you can't even buy right now, but we've seen the award given to it, so we assume it'll get announced at some point, was that SVS Micro, the 3000 Micro in-wall version.
Yeah.
Which should be coming at some point and should cost less than either of those options. But again, the spec on the 3000 Micro, the current one, is 23 hertz, right? So, all of them, you're giving up a little bit of something. But if you need an in-wall option, I think those are the three places I'd look. I'd probably, since the garage isn't even constructed yet, wait to at least see what that in-wall SVS ends up costing, because that's almost certainly going to be the most cost-effective choice.
Yeah, and then don't buy it and get the 2-cylinder subs and do the other ththing, because that's better. I mean, that's literally better. I mean, you could put, like Rob said, you could put them on the ground.
Yeah.
And you could just build a little, a little frame over them, so that, just like you would build for like or I mean, you could put them in the corner too and do it the same thing. Just build a frame over them like you were doing the chunk traps in the corner. So basically, floor to ceiling, and then above them, with a little bit of gap for the air, or to the side of them if they're lying on the ground, a little bit of gap for the port. You could fill it with insulation. You now have half a subwoofer on one side, and the other half is bass trapping. So I mean, then it is hidden, but it is not an end wall that is going to be a compromise. That's what I think.
For practical purposes, I'm not a super big fan of the let's try to build a false room within a room. I don't think it's really feasibly going to have the space for it. So for handling the front wides, if you do them, I'm still back to the same solution as I said last week. I think I would just get regular speakers, set them up, and then cover them in cloth, or paint them even, because you can paint the outside cabinet. That's all right. So I think that's how I would handle the front wides. I don't think you're going to be able to do the false room within a room.
So going with an acoustically transparent screen does sound very tempting, but won't it result in some image degradation no matter what? If you can get past that, is Seymour AV truly the absolute best that money can buy when it comes to acoustically transparent screens, or are there other options out there you should also be looking at? Well, we only ever suggest two, really, and that's Seymour AV and the Loon Vision. And I'll be honest with you, the last 4 or 5 times I've tried to find a Loon Vision in the States, they've been completely unavailable.
In Canada, they're sort of the way to go, because they are a Canadian company, and it's more costly to import Seymour AV into Canada than it is to get an Loon Vision screen. So it sort of depends on which side of the border you're on.
Yeah, I think so.
But I mean, it's not just us going by like the AccuCal, measurements and stuff that they did of screens. The Seymour AVs came out on top. You can also go to Seymour Screen Excellence if you want to get it through a dealer instead of doing the consumer version, but it's the same stuff. So, that is certainly where I would point you. By all means, get samples and test it out that way. Will there be some image degradation? Yeah, there's holes in the screen. It's sort of unavoidable, but to what extent are you willing to compromise on the audio? That's really what we're getting at. And the idea to me is that the compromise on the video side is very, very small with the Seymour AV screens. I don't think you're giving up a ton by going with those on the image side. And you're gaining a whole bunch, especially in a case like yours on the acoustically transparent side. So I would go for it, because everything results in some amount of little bit of compromise, be it on the audio or on the video side.
Right. And the idea here, for those of you that don't remember our conversation about this last time, is that we suggested that he get an acoustically transparent screen that put all the speakers into the wall, either behind the screen or at least the center, and then the left and right. But he wants
wall-to-wall, side-to-side. So if you want a wall-to-wall screen side-to-side, the speakers, he was saying the speakers could go below the screen. I'm like, that is a compromise, Karl. That is definitely a compromise. Yeah. So I would do this.
So Rob suggested the Sonos MAG6 in-ceiling speakers, but they are not THX certified. Are there any THX certified in-ceilings that we would recommend? Probably, but really? I
think this is more of a curiosity, because he's like, if I did want to get a THX certified, every component has to be. So
right, and that's true. So again, to remind our listeners, he asked if he could get his his home theater like certified in some way. And there are ways to do that. You can have a professional come in. They have to install everything themselves usually. They have to test everything and hit certain benchmarks before it can receive the THX certification or whatever. Or you can just buy a plaque that says THX on it, post it outside the door, and then make sure that everything within the theater is a THX certified component for that actual space. So THX certification is all about how big the room is. I don't think they do screens, do they? They don't do like TVs or projectors.
I think maybe at one point they did, but I haven't really seen it as of late.
No, I haven't either. So it would be speakers, receivers, subwoofers, all of those components can all be THX certified, and it's always based on the room size. So he knows how big his room is. He buys the THX certification that's at least for that size room, and then you can kind of with at least some semblance of truth say that I have a THX theater.
So the one easy option, if you are sticking with the Monoprice Monolith THX in-wall speakers, is to get the THX 265 in-wall that go for $300 each. Those are in-walls. They do not have dedicated backer boxes, so you can install them in their ceiling, but you must have a backer box by code. So you just have to make sure that's constructed either yourself or, better yet, get your contractor to do it to make sure it's all up to, because that's just fire safety code, is having the backer box on anything that goes in ceiling. But yeah, you absolutely could use those THX 265 IWs from Monoprice Monolith and have everything matching that way. But if you're like, I don't want the square shape, I want the round shape to go in my ceiling, then I would probably point you to Kef, because Kef has their THX certified in-ceiling speakers. The CI 160RR THX is probably the model I would point you to, and those are $800 each. So that is very spendy to get your THX certified in-ceiling speakers, but about the only
Atmos.
other... Yeah, there's only a couple other companies that are still doing it. I think Triad is still doing it. Klipsch is still doing it.
Those will be cheap.
They are not cheap, and they're horn loaded, and they're not going to sound like the other speakers in your room. So the Klipsch, the Kefs rather, are probably going to come closest timbre wise. So that's where I can point you. I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, I don't think. Just don't mention the in-ceiling speakers. Don't just all these speakers are. Look at my surround speakers. They're all in the wall here. Look at the speakers in the wall behind the screens. These are all receivers THX certified. My subwoofers. I mean, there are subwoofers. I mean, I guess M&K is coming out.
Yeah, you could go with the Monoprice subwoofers. They're
the
THX
Monoprice
certified.
subwoofers. I know we said the round subs, but you could go with the Monoprice. M&K just released some ridiculously large subwoofers that are, I mean, you could go with the 10-inch one, hits 20 hertz anyways, and it would destroy this room. So, I mean, I think they're ultra certified, which is way bigger than your room. So, Jeff will be downsizing. The new place is a condo plus a small guest house. He'll be saying goodbye to a 16 by 20 foot room with his JVC projector and a 7.2.4 system in it. That makes him sad.
I could understand.
Someone has made Jeff cry. But he'll make do as best he can in the new place. His first thought is to set up a small home theater in the guest house. It's just a bedroom and a small bathroom. That's perfect. The bedroom is about 10.5 by 12 with an 8-foot ceiling. There's a door on the north wall, but he doesn't actually have to use that door because there's also a sliding door on the east wall that can be used to enter and exit. The east wall also has 2 closets. The south wall has a window. Let me try this again. Door on the north wall.
Yep.
East wall has a sliding door.
Yep, over on the right.
The east wall also has closets, and the south wall has a window, and the bathroom takes up the southwest corner, so it's not actually a rectangle. It's in there. Okay, sliding doors. Okay.
We're showing a diagram on YouTube. Tom is taking it in.
He'd go for a flat screen TV in the 5.1 or 5.2 setup, given the small room size, but how should it be oriented? It doesn't really seem like he'll have a great spot for one of the surround speakers, no matter what he does, any ideas. So the door at the north there, and then...
Yeah, so the door on the north could be just like permanently closed. That's why he's saying he doesn't need to use it. So he's like, I could put the TV on the north wall, in front of the door, basically, like put it on a stand with a mount. That's not a problem. But then where would the surround speakers go? You got a wall on the left if you orient things that way, but you're essentially going to have either the closet or the sliding door on your right. So where do you put a surround speaker that way? I'm thinking that You make the west wall your TV
Right.
wall. And
I
there,
know it's the long wall, and you probably don't want to do that because of that, but it actually makes it easier for you to put a couch in here.
it sure does. Yeah. So if you're perusing the diagrams and not thinking north, east, west, south, it would mean the closets are behind you and the bathroom is on your left. And the little teeny hallway that forms between the bathroom and the closet, that is on your left. So I think he's going, okay, if I orient things that way, I don't really have a great spot for the left surround speaker.
Yeah.
But my thought is, if you're stopping at 5.1 or 5.2 anyway, then you could do something like a prime elevation and you could mount it on the ceiling, to be honest. You could have an
Right.
angled surround speaker that's mounted on the ceiling. I'm not super concerned about that. I think that'll be a very enjoyable experience still if you do it that way. You could also put the left surround speaker on a stand if you're willing to. That's
Right.
that is doable. So I think those are really
I like the
two
elevation. I like the elevation.
Yeah.
It makes it so that you can still use that door.
That's right.
It makes it so you don't really have to worry about placement that much, because I'm sure this hallway.
Yeah. And
that,
if you
you can mount it on the ceiling. You don't
Yeah.
you don't actually have to mount it on a wall.
Yeah,
for
and that
so.
way, like, you've got a continuous wall to put your TV on. You've got the closets behind you that you can still access. You can still access that door on the north wall, which I think is probably a better idea than
Right.
sealing it off. So to me, I don't really see another great way to orient the room. That's how I would do it based on the diagram that we've got.
Right, and you're going to have to decide if you want your couch a little bit closer than
Yeah.
halfway in the room or a little bit further away. If it's a little bit further away, it's going to be kind of in line with the hallway and everything else, but who cares? This is a home theater, not an actual whatever. Should he consider renovating the guest house and removing the bathroom completely? He isn't sure what the plumbing and exposed pipe situation would end up. I would not remove the bathroom.
I would absolutely not remove the bathroom. No way, no how would I remove the bathroom.
Oh my God, having to get up from your TV and walk all the way back to the house to go to the bathroom, that's a
way.
deal breaker for me.
way.
So I would not do that. I understand what you're saying. You could do it, but then I would say you then now have to put the bathroom back in. You could take it out, but now you have to find a different spot for it because you need to have a bathroom.
Oh, and there's
in there.
so many options in here.
Yeah, I know, right? There's also a spare bedroom in the main condo. It's 12 by 12. The west wall there has a closet, sliding door, and a window. The south has two doors, and the north wall has a window. So once again, a challenge for where speakers would go. Plus, the room is not as isolated as being in a separate guest house. What do we think? I mean, so I wrote an article a long time ago about picking the right room for your home theater, and I cannot stress enough the value of being able to turn it up
Yep.
when somebody else is sleeping. So for me, like my wife the other day was like, "Oh, you were playing the TV too loud last night." So I had put in my headphones and I listened to this podcast and it helped me fall asleep. Like, I'm sorry, I had it too loud. I didn't realize I had it too loud. I was watching Venom because I thought I hadn't seen it in a long time and I wanted to see it again and to remember whether or not I liked it. And I thought by the end of that movie, I think I liked it more the first time. So
Could be.
but I didn't really like it that much the second time. I thought it was kind of crappy. But the point being is that I am all the way. I'm not as far away, but I am like we have one wall that's common to us, and I am as far away from her on that wall as I possibly can, the long ways of the house. So I am as far as I can be. And she could still hear it. So, and I didn't think I had it that loud. So I am going to say that I would definitely, if I'm going to have a compromised placement anyways, I might as well be in that guest house where I don't have to worry about turning it up so much. So I am definitely going to do that.
Yeah, I think because of where he came from in a nearly ideal setup in a dedicated room with a 7.2.4 configuration, and this is going to be a downgrade, at least in the number of speakers, if nothing else. I think he was overly concerned, that he's changing too many things, and I can see how that would, psychologically get into your head.
Still think you need to go 2 subwoofers, though. Let me just say that. But you can go with 2 real small ones,
That's
like
right.
the SB1000s or SB2000s if you're really wanting to crush the room, would be just fine.
But I absolutely think having your surround speakers either on stands or ceiling mounted with angled designs is really fine and still going to be a very enjoyable experience in this room. And I would absolutely go with the guest house, no question.
People get really wrapped up in like the numbers of these things.
Yeah, I get it.
mean? And I'm the same way. You get people in like they're just so worried that they're going to be missing something. I'm like, once you get in there, you're going to be like, I mean, I don't remember what my old system sounds like that much, and I'm sure it sounded better, but this sounds pretty dang good. Is kind of going to be your reaction. And you may experience that the bass is even better because of the small room and you being able to absolutely crush it.
That's right.
24/7.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to do that in the spare room in the condo.
Cesar. Cesar's room is long and narrow with a low ceiling. He's got 6 feet of space behind his seats, and he's pushed all the seats over against the left wall to give sufficient walkway on the right. He recently bought a pair of SVS Ultra bookshelf speakers and the Ultra Center for his front 3, plus he's got a pair of SB 3000 subs. How big is this room? It doesn't say. Okay, so now he wants to know what to get for surrounds and whether he should also get surround backs. There's a bit of a budget to consider, so he could get 4 prime elevation speakers. Would that be a good way to go for both surrounds and surround backs? Or he could get either the Ultra surrounds, which can be wall mounted and set to either bipole or dipole, or another pair of Ultra bookshelf speakers if he wanted. He could also add a pair of prime elevations for surround backs later. What do we think would be best? I mean, I have the prime surrounds. Is that what they're called?
Satellites.
Or the satellites?
You have the satellites.
And I have them matched just fine with my Ultras, the SVS Ultra bookshelves and center up front. I would say go with that, unless the wall mounting is what you're really looking for, in which case elevations are essentially a prime speaker, prime satellite that can be mounted to a ceiling or a wall. And I find no problem with either one of those. I think the Ultra bookshelf is way overkill for
I would not do the
surround.
Ultra bookshelf. I definitely would not do the Ultra bookshelf. I just think the size is going to be a problem potentially in those positions.
The satellites aren't tiny. I mean, they're not tiny, but they are certainly, easy to place near a wall. Yeah. So I would have no problems going with either the elevations or the prime satellites.
Okay. Because of the very specific scenario that he described for how his seating is set up, might make an argument for the Ultra surrounds because it is the scenario I've described in the past where when you have a seat that is physically very close to the side wall next to it, and that's the case for his left seat, since that's pushed over to the left of the room so that he can have a walkway on the right. Ironically, if you put one of these surround speakers right beside your head, I mean, it seems like that's going to be insane, but you put it right beside your head and put it in dipole mode, even though we rarely use dipoles anymore after Atmos has taken over things. This is where a dipole speaker thrives, because you will have an outright null right in front of the face of this speaker. And when that is right beside your head and your head is right next to the wall, that is a very beneficial thing, because anything else is going to have that left surround speaker be distracting, I would assume, for the person in the leftmost seat who's right up against the left wall. That's my thought on that. I would entertain the idea. And since it's SVS and you can ship it back without it being a penny out of pocket, I would maybe entertain the idea of giving it a try, because, it is a fair amount of money, but if you try it out, put it in dipole mode, put that surround speaker right beside the leftmost seat and sit in that seat and see how it goes. And if you're like, you know what, this is actually kind of worth it, then great. And if not, send it back. Doesn't cost you a penny. So I would suggest maybe giving that a try.
Okay. He's using some Outdoor Speaker Depot in-ceiling speakers for Atmos. With his low ceiling height, he definitely needs in-ceilings, but could he recess prime elevation speakers and use those? Is there an upgrade we can suggest for his in-ceilings? I don't see why you would need to.
I don't think you need it. I really don't think you need it.
Let me put it this way. Have you ever had the experience of buying something and afterwards immediately thinking to yourself, I just wasted a lot of money? Because that, I think, it will be your experience with upgrading Atmos speakers, regardless of what you upgrade. I mean, I literally think you can get those $800 up each Kef speakers, place them in place of these Outdoor Speaker Depot speakers, and go, I don't really hear a difference. I mean, that's maybe if you run a room correction.
Yeah, I think maybe if you literally unplugged all your speakers and just listened to one of the overheads, maybe you'd be able to tell it, but that's not how you're using the system in regular use. I definitely think this is a concept in mind more than it is an actual need, because those Outdoor Speaker Depot in-ceiling speakers, there's nothing wrong with them. They're pretty good speakers. And I think he's just going, well, I'm upgrading all my other speakers, so these ones cost so much less, I must need to to upgrade them also. If you insist upon it, then it's the ones I've mentioned before, those Sonance Mag 6s. They're still on sale for $150 a pair, so I don't feel terrible about recommending to anybody. And they have the dedicated backer boxes that are $60 a pair, so I'm like okay with saying that, but I don't think you should get them, not when you already have in-ceiling speakers. They're not going to be an upgrade in my opinion, but I'll just put it out there as like, yeah, these are a great match for the SVS speakers, but if you didn't have any in-ceiling speakers, I'd point you to these. I'd point you to the Sonance Mag 6s, so I'm okay saying that, but I really don't think you need to do this, Cesar.
Junior. So we're on to somebody new here. Junior wrote us a while back to ask about plans for his basement home theater. We suggested that turning the orientation 90 degrees to be wider than it is long, but he really does need 6 seats, and they genuinely have that many people watching in their household on a regular basis. Fine, get a really long couch. I don't care.
So the movie room is in the corner of his basement. That'll be finished fully, and he's got a diagram for how he plans to lay out his theater longer than it is wide.
Yeah, longer than this wide. All right. Since things are in renovation, there's a chance the door to the theater can be moved about 1.5 feet, so that won't be quite so problematic for where the front left speaker will go. So with this orientation settled, he's still trying to figure out how he's going to cram everything in there. I can tell you right now, cramming everything in there is almost certainly not going to be what we recommend. And that's because sonically, you need separation between your speakers in order for you to be able to differentiate what's playing what. So you're going to want 7.2.11 or something, and I'm going to say 5 with 2 side surrounds and maybe some Atmos speakers, and that's going to be as much as I'm going to recommend. So let's just wrap your head around the disappointment that's about to come and how much you think I'm an idiot. Let's just go on with that. So looking at the small amount of space on either side of the seats, he's pretty sure his Paradigm Surround 1 speakers are going to stick out too much. So should he go with the super flat KEF T series that we've mentioned? Will those be a really bad mismatch in the sound to the rest of the Paradigm speakers? Should he consider the Paradigm Millennia on-wall speakers for surrounds instead? Isn't this a basement that's just being finished right now? Can't he just get in-wall speakers if sticking out is an issue?
He really wants the soundproofing to take priority over everything, so he doesn't want holes in the walls, and I'm in agreement with that. I agree with that. From what you've said, I would consider the Paradigm Millennias. I don't think the KEF T series really are going to be a fantastic match. They are about as flat as you can possibly get, but I don't think they're going to be a super fantastic match. The Millennia series is pretty darn flat. So if those surround ones really do protrude too much, then yeah, I would consider the Millennia series. They're not inexpensive, but that will be a better match, and they do have the flatter form factor. And like Tom mentioned at the beginning, I'd probably, in this setup, if it's going to end up being this way, go for 2 pairs of them on the side walls, 1 for each. So you end up with 7 speakers, but 2 of them are not surround backs. They're just duplicates of the surrounds.
Yes. So speaking of surround backs, we said not to do surround backs. Yes,
we did,
and we're gonna. I can see your little diagram here, and you have them back there, and I do not want them back there. And look how close they are to your Atmos speakers. By the way, they are literally the same speaker. Especially, we said not to do surround backs, especially since he was already concerned about head height clearance for the back row of seats. But his Anthem receiver can have 2 completely different configurations stored in memory. So maybe when it's just him or just him and his wife, he could use a 7-speaker configuration. And when people are sitting in the back row, switch over to a 5-speaker configuration. What do we think? Stop it. That's what I think. Stop it. So now you're saying, okay, so let's just really think about it. Let's just think about it, me and you, for a second. Let's just talk this through. Not only will you now have if you do the 2-side surrounds, first of all, like Rob just suggested, and I suggested before that, you're not going to have side surrounds, surround back speakers, and Atmos speakers within 3 feet of each other.
Yep.
If not closer, okay? Those are all the same speaker. So they are all going to be playing sounds at you from like a couple of degrees difference, no matter how many people are sitting in here. Okay? So we've already got an issue as far as that is concerned. We've already got an issue for whether or not Atmos is even going to be possible in this room. Surround backs are not possible. I mean, you can make all the arguments you want for it, but you're literally going to have to rewire. And then you still can't have Atmos because the surround backs and the Atmos speakers are basically going to be in the same spot. Because in order for your surround backs to be where they're supposed to be, they should be in line with your front speakers, which puts them essentially in the corner. And there is no other place to put them. So you will have to physically unwire your second pair of side surrounds in order for you to now have surround backs, or to make your second pair of side surrounds be surround backs, which are now in the wrong location. In order for this to be a thing.
When you're in the
surround backs is not happening.
When you're in the front row and you've got the 2 sets of side surrounds going, the surround back channels are still being played out of the surround speakers. Those sounds don't just disappear. And you're going to physically have speakers behind you thanks to your 2 pairs of side surrounds. It's still going to be a great experience in the main row of seats.
Yeah. So he has SVS Prime Elevation speakers on hand that he was thinking he'd use for Atmos. Part of the reason is because he wants good soundproofing and didn't want to put holes in his ceilings. But any suggestions for in ceilings that might work better? He's in Canada, and Paradigm's in ceilings seem a bit overpriced.
Yeah, they do.
So, first of all, as far as Prime Elevation speakers are concerned in Paradigm, they should pair together just fine. Paradigm goes for a fairly flat frequency response, and of course SVS does as well. So those 2 speakers will have no problems pairing together. Again, I don't know how you're going to put Atmos speakers behind the second row of seats.
No, I preferred the original plan, which was he's basically going to have a shelf that's holding the projector at the very back of the theater, just behind the back row of seats. And I'm like, Prime Elevations, which you already own, on that shelf. That's your rear heights. That makes all the sense to me in the world. They're angled down from that back shelf, but that's your rear heights. And then the other pair of Prime Elevations that you already own on the front wall, there's your front heights. This room is not so large that there's going to be any problem having them actually positioned as front and rear heights and still getting your Atmos effects. I'm on that all day. But
I'm cheating them in too. I mean, I'm cheating them away from the walls and away from those side surround speakers.
Yeah, from the side walls.
Yeah, from the side walls. For your Atmos experience in the front row, if that's where you're going to be seating, it will be as good as it's probably going to be able to be.
Yeah, you're going to be pretty close to equidistant if you do that as actual front heights, rear heights. It's going to be a great experience.
Yeah,
so
the back row is not going to be so good, but that was always going to be the case.
That's
so
they're close to the back wall anyway.
To me, this is the only way to set up this room. Sure. You're gonna put those Atmos speakers on that shelf. You're going to cheat them in a couple of feet, and to get them away from the side surrounds, especially that second pair of side surrounds, and then you're going to run this as a 5-point. I don't even see subwoofers in here.
Yeah,
but
5.2.4.
4 is what you're going to do, and you're going to run it that way all the time. I don't care what your Anthem receiver can do. But you're going to do this.
Just to give a direct answer to the question as asked, can I interest you in some Sonance Mag 6 in-ceiling speakers, which are available from Best Buy Canada? The price is not as good. They're $300 a pair. It's literally twice the dollar amount of the sale price in the States. But honestly, compared to other in-ceiling speakers you can get in Canada, that's a pretty darn good deal. And the sound quality matching up to the other SVS speakers and the Paradigm speakers, I have no qualms about the timbre match of those. So if you must, then Sonance Mag 6s, and it's going to be a continuing running joke as we go along here. So
I'm just going to say, I just scanned this next question. I'm like, it's the same freaking answer.
That's why I put it in there, because it's funny.
Will picked up a used package of SVS speakers, including a pair of Prime Towers, a Prime Center, and a pair of Prime Satellites. Very good speakers. The package also included a 7-channel receiver, but he's not using that. He's got a Marantz SR6011 that he already owns, and he wants to have a 5.2.4 configuration, so the other one's not going to be good. He'll sell that for profit. He doesn't want to spend more than $500 per pair on this overhead speakers, and the room is roughly 12 by 16. He hasn't decided whether he wants to use in-ceiling or on-ceiling speakers, and he's aware of the Prime Elevations, which would max out his budget in the black ash finish, which are perfectly fine because you never really look at the things anyways, and go over his budget for the gloss finish, which you don't really want, so it doesn't matter. Unless he finds them used or in the SVS outlet store, which would also be fine. Please do that. So what alternatives do we suggest, and what in-ceilings would we suggest? Let me guess.
Can you take a stab at it?
3 times in a row, he's
Yes.
recommended the same in-ceiling speakers, and it depends. If they're in Canada, they're $300 a pair, still in your budget. If you're in America, it's $150 a pair.
Yeah, the Sonance Mag
capitalism.
6s, surprise, come up. Get the backer boxes. Get the backer boxes for them if you do in-ceiling, but yeah, you're still well within budget if you go with the Sonance Mag 6s, so I just found that humorous.
Are the backer boxes twice as much in Canada as well?
No, I think they were $100 a pair, so almost twice as much.
Almost twice as much?
Almost twice as much. But if
Still
you are,
under his budget, though.
yeah, if you are going to do on-ceiling, I mean, I would probably get the Prime Elevations in the black ash finish. An alternative could be maybe the ELACs, I guess. You could do the ELAC on walls as
OW, whatever they are, 6.2 or something.
Yeah,
like
4.
that.
I think there's a 4 in there. I think it's the OW4s from ELAC. But I think that would be an alternative that fits the budget. It's a little bit less expensive than the Prime Elevations, and it's a completely flat form factor. It's not a wedge shape. So if that's what you wanted, that could be an alternative.
Right. Don't they have a wedge shape? They do.
Yeah, they've got
has
an
a wedge.
Atmos speaker. They've got an Atmos module. I'm not sure if you can use that module on a wall or on a
don't see
ceiling,
why
or if
not.
it's up
You
firing.
could
Well, I
try.
mean, you can. Like
could always
physically,
do
you
it.
can, but I think it was designed for upward firing only.
Yeah. Julian is generally...
Did we miss one? Yeah, we missed the second
I'm sorry.
part. It's short then.
For his surround speakers, will the Prime satellites be fine, or should he move them up to the Prime book? They're fine.
They're absolutely fine. There is no need to upgrade your Prime satellites for your surround positions to the Prime bookshelf speakers. The Prime bookshelves are big. Well, you've got, don't you? Doesn't he have Prime bookshelves now?
No, his towers.
Okay. No, the Prime bookshelves are a little bit bigger than you might imagine. The satellites, 100% fine as your surrounds.
Yeah. I use them. That's just fine. Julian is generally watching physical media most often, but he picked up an Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. He said plus, but we think he means max because...
Yeah.
Who could possibly be confused by these names?
Well, it's not as though there's
These
any
naming
streaming
conventions.
services that use plus or max at the end of their titles to confuse you with that.
I hate all of you. I hate all of you. I would like to go into the boardrooms of all these people and just like one big comically large hand slap everyone across
Well,
the
it's
face.
even funny because when you know how things autocomplete when you're searching, right? So you can put in Amazon Fire TV Stick and like plus is one of the options. So I'm like, oh, is there a plus? But when you click on it, it just goes to the max. So like, I guess people are searching for a plus and it takes them to the max.
Anyways, he picked it up when they were on sale. One of the main reasons he got it was because he wanted to try Dolby Atmos music via Tidal, and this Fire TV Stick supports that. Mm-hmm. So he plays a given track in 2-channel, then switches over to the Atmos version of the track. The Atmos version is much, much quieter. It seems to be about 20 dB quieter if his volume dial settings are any indication. Is that just the way it is coming from Tidal, or is it the fault of his Fire TV Stick? I wonder if that's a bandwidth issue. Is that a bandwidth issue? I mean,
the volume? I don't think it's that. I think what's going on, and I'm not 100% sure.
I mean, we can't know. The truth of the matter is that we are going to guess when it comes to these things because
but it's a bit of an educated guess.
Yeah, it's it's educated, but it's also like, this is something they could fix through the app if they really, really wanted to. Mm-hmm. I mean, they don't. They're not gonna.
But I believe that
really
part of it is that when they are mixing for Atmos music, they are using Dolby's tools, and Dolby does go by reference volume.
Right.
And I don't know if there's a difference for the music versus the movie mixing, but I think probably by default, the tools are set up to use movie reference volume. Now, movie reference volume, the maximum decibel level that you would get out of any individual speaker channel is 105. That's the peak, with averages of 85. Whereas in music, it's very common to mix to 120 decibels. That's really common.
Bit louder.
Yeah,
it's a little bit louder.
It happens very, very commonly in music. So, I mean, a 15 decibel difference wouldn't surprise me at all. That wouldn't be a surprise to me whatsoever if that were going on, because a ton of music is mixed to 120 decibel peaks, and then it's 105 for movies, and I think the Atmos music is being mixed that way.
And then we can extrapolate from that too. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what his next question is, but we can extrapolate and say, okay, so what are you doing? You're listening to the 2-channel, then you're switching to the Atmos. So are we trying to compare the two? Because what we are comparing is not apples to apples. You're not comparing the same mix in 2-channel versus the same mix in Atmos. Mm-hmm. It is literally different mixes, which means
completely
that
different mixes.
You are comparing. you're not comparing the same mix in two different formats. You're comparing two different mixes in two different formats, which means that you cannot directly compare the two because there's too many. You don't know what's making the difference.
But I mean, it makes sense to me that somebody wants to hear the two different versions of the track.
Oh yeah. This is just from people who are going to sit here and invariably say, "Oh, the Atmos track is so much better." Well, it's not because of Atmos, though, is it?
There is the other possibility that I don't know what listening mode you're using when you're doing this, because some people insist on using, say, direct mode when it's two-channel, which means that all of your room correction and bass management and everything was turned off. I'm not saying he did this, but it's a possibility because we've certainly seen other people do it, and that could have an impact on the volume level as well. So it might be a listening mode setting on your AV receiver. Sure. It's a possibility.
So he says it's much easier to find what he wants to listen to on his phone rather than using the remote to browse and navigate the Fire TV stick. Is there a different streaming device that can use Tidal Connect so that you can control playback on the native Tidal app on his phone? I don't know.
Yeah, so Tidal Connect is their own cloud-based service. And so they've got a list of devices that use Tidal Connect. They are these like dedicated network streaming devices that are all, in my opinion, way overpriced. But out of all of them, I would probably, I strongly hesitate. This is not a recommendation, but if it's like gun to my head, which of these would you pick? I would probably go with the name, NAIM.
All the I know the names of all of these, almost all of these products, and they are almost all of them are universally, audiophile grade.
That's right.
Audiophile priced.
Yeah.
Overpriced.
So please don't take that as a recommendation from me, but gun to my head, I would maybe point you that direction if you're choosing from this selection. But I am not familiar enough firsthand to know if this would be a good experience for you, but the alternative would be to get an NVIDIA Shield, because that can also do Atmos music from Tidal, and that, being based on Android, you can cast. You can use the Google Cast functionality to send the audio from your phone to the NVIDIA Shield, at which point the Shield takes over playing. You can go and do other stuff on your phone because that's how the casting system works. You're just choosing what you want to play on the phone, and then you press the Cast button to send it to your Shield, and the Shield takes over. So that's not exactly the same as Tidal Connect. Like, I don't think it does the thing where it like remembers where you were in the song if you come back, which is something Tidal Connect can do. The casting isn't going to give you that functionality as far as I'm aware. But in terms of just, I want to choose what I'm listening to on my phone and then send it to the device that's connected to my surround sound system, I think that's the less expensive alternative, would be to get an NVIDIA Shield.
Okay. I tried to look at how much the Dolly one cost, and there's just too many cookies involved.
Okay.
So I said no. Bob in the Philippines. Just in general, what's our take on companies that offer aftermarket upgrade kits for popular speakers such as the SVS Ultra bookshelves? He's seen kits that sell for around $250 a pair that replace the woofer and some crossover components for it, as an example. Bob isn't particularly interested in going down that rabbit hole at all. He's just curious if such kits genuinely improve the sound or if it's more similar, just different, or maybe no real change at all. So we see this, and some people have really made a name for themselves. And what they'll do is they will take a speaker that is a popular speaker, usually a lower quality speaker, but not always, and then they will they will offer to upgrade it for you, or they will sell an upgrade kit that they can do. Now, if it's Ascend Acoustics doing it with their raw ribbon tweeters and stuff like that, well, that's that's an obvious upgrade that is happening. Many of these aftermarket kits are little more than, I think downgrades in quality, most likely. Some of them will be good. And I've seen like I remember years ago, there was this weird speaker that had like sort of a rounded cabinet that was like $60 and a pair from like Best Buy or something like that. And people went nuts for it over the internet. And for a short period of time, like everybody was buying them, talking about how great they sounded, blah, blah, blah. And then somebody serious got a hold of them, including me, and went, I mean, they're okay for $60 speakers. Sure. They're not so bad, but they're still $60 speakers. And you can clearly hear they are not that good. They're not comparing, people are comparing them to $1,000 a pair of speakers. I'm like, no, They don't compare. So then somebody will go, okay, well, I've got the speaker upgrade kit, and I swap out the crossover for this new crossover, and here's a bunch of insulation that I'm going to put inside and do all these other things and refirm up the cabinet. It's going to make it sound better. I mean, I'm sure it made it sound better. It's still got a 25-cent woofer and a 50-cent 50-cent tweeter in there, and but other than that, they can make it sound better. So, can these things make your speakers sound better? Yes. Do they always universally make your speakers sound better? I'm gonna say no.
Yeah. There's no way to say like a full blanket statement of these are worthwhile. It's definitely a case by case basis. Because like a great example, Philharmonic Audio, they took the Pioneer Andrew Jones speakers.
Right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
And like there, it makes so much sense because the cabinet in those speakers was the lion's share of the cost of that speaker. And Pioneer, making those cabinets, can make those cabinets at a higher quality at a lower price than some small boutique speaker manufacturer could. They just have the economy of scale to get the cabinets made. So he's like, for the money that you're paying, this is a better cabinet than any other speaker at this price is going to be able to give you. But they had to skimp on the cost of the tweeter and the woofer and the crossover honestly was pretty impressive inside of there. But, like they had to make some sacrifices to hit the price point they were going for. So, over at Philharmonic Audio, he's like, hey, if I upgrade everything except the cabinet, I can still make a speaker that costs less than a comparable speaker from a small outfit just because of the cost of the cabinet, but it's going to sound better than the stock Pioneer Andrew Jones speaker. So I'm like, yeah, in that case, it ends up making a lot of sense. I think the same thing can and should be done with those Yamo Studio S-Series speakers. Again, the economy of scale of just making that cabinet, and it's a really nice looking cabinet. I'm like, man, if you can put a better quality tweeter and adjust the crossover in that thing, you can have yourself a killer, still inexpensive speaker. And that's why I think it makes the most sense, is typically on the lower priced end. And I mean, then there's going to be the side who's like, hey, money's no object, so I can take this speaker and, put in $1,000 tweeter and, $20,000 woofer and $50,000 worth of crossover and just keep the cabinet. Okay, fine.
There was a Sony CD player that the audiophile community was hot on for a long time, and they would aftermarket install tubes in it. You would see these cutouts in the back of them with tubes sticking out the back of them, and I'm like, what? Why? And the reason, of course, is audiophiles love tubes. Just full stop. That's a blanket statement I can make, and it is true. They love tubes, but anything that you could do to that CD player is clearly going to make it less accurate than just being a CD player. So you can look at that and go, okay, well, that's clearly not going to do anything. But Rob's right. You can where it makes the most sense is when you take a mass-produced speaker where there is a clear problem where all the problems are where you can make massive gains in sound quality in just a few components.
And if you tried to make the whole speaker, including the cabinet yourself, you'd end up spending way too much more. The cabinet is where all the value is. So
when somebody says they have a SVS upgrade, I'm like, yeah, really? Do you though?
Yeah, in the specific case of the Ultra bookshelf, I'm like,
I don't know about that. I mean, what are you putting a beryllium tweeter in there? I mean, what are you doing? I don't know.
If the upgrade you were putting in there was, $7,000 worth of tweeter, woofer, and crossover, okay, you're again keeping the cabinet because the economies of scale of SVS making those cabinets. But when it's a $250 upgrade, I'm like, that's gonna be. I would entertain the idea it's probably going to be less accurate. Maybe you like it more, but it's probably going to be less accurate.
Right. I would agree with that. Zach says, after 13 years of valiant service, it was finally time for Zach's Samsung DLP rear projection TV to retire. It was replaced by... Retire? You should take it out.
Bon voyage, sir.
You should take it out to it. You should Office Space that thing. Take it out to a field and beat the crap out of it with a bat. It was replaced by a 77-inch LG C1 OLED. To say it's a little bit better is like saying the sun is a little bit brighter than the moon. So,
yeah.
He's like, I didn't know what hot spotting was until I saw what hot spotting wasn't.
That's a nice upgrade, man.
That's a good upgrade.
You want to talk about a bang for your buck upgrade? Woo!
That's it. That's noticing a difference right there.
Yeah.
So he also got a new NVIDIA Shield Pro and moved his older version of the Shield upstairs. He's waiting on a receiver upgrade until there's a really good model to buy. Yeah, aren't we all?
Fair enough.
So for now, the Shield Pro is plugged directly into his OLED, which then sends the audio to his Denon X4300H via ARC.
Now, X4300H, that's got HDMI 2.0, right? So I don't see really any reason why you couldn't plug the Shield Pro
Rob? It's 2.1.
into that Denon. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's all labeled 2.1 now. But no, I'm thinking that can definitely plug straight into the Denon in that instance. There's no 4K 120 stuff going on from the Shield Pro. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's that part.
Anyways, that's the way he's got it.
Yeah.
So you follow the picture settings from HDTV test. I'm going to have to go get some more water because I don't know why I just choked on water, but now I need to go drink some more. And thinks it looks great. But specifically with Apple TV Plus app on the Shield Pro, motion looks kind of jerky. Mm-hmm. He's tried manually switching the Shield Pro to 4K at 24 hertz instead of 60 hertz, which seems to effectively get rid of judder for most of the other apps on the Shield Pro. But for the Apple TV Plus app, there's still what looks to be some frame skipping. And strangely, it happens with Netflix sometimes too. He uses Plex a lot, and that does its own automatic frame rate switching, and it looks really well. It works really well. If he leaves the Shield Pro in 24 hertz output all the time, the menus look jerky and strange, but he prefers to leave the Shield in 60 hertz output if possible. But any suggestions for how to get the Apple TV Plus looking smooth without resorting to true motion on his LG OLED, which would be bad. So, okay.
Yeah, if you want to grab some water, I can answer this question because this is
I'm going to do that because I am choking over here.
Yeah, so this is a bit of a weird situation. There are other people who have reported the very same problem, and I'll link to that on NVIDIA's own support forums. It's because when it is outputting in, you'd actually want to choose the 23.976 hertz output option to get this going. But when you do that, when you manually put the NVIDIA Shield Pro into 23.976 hertz output mode, you should be able to play that back judder-free on your LG OLED. So this is a weird situation where what you essentially need to do is have the NVIDIA Shield already set into 23.976 hertz mode before you download and start using the Apple TV Plus app. And what people have found is basically deleting the app and reinstalling it alone is not quite enough. If you've ever had to reset your Plex server on the NVIDIA Shield Pro, or if you had a previous NVIDIA Shield that could act as a Plex server, you might be familiar with this process. I'm kind of hoping you are, but if not, you basically just got to dig through the menus of the Shield. There's it's the whole Android menu system, but you dig through there and you're looking for the local app data and the cache app data. It's all buried in the menus, but you can find the local app data and the cache app data. So after you delete the app to start, you've got to find that local app data and the cache app data and delete those for the Apple TV Plus app as well. Wipe it off the system. I mean, the alternative is if you kind of just got this NVIDIA Shield Pro and you don't mind doing the whole setup again, you can just do a full factory reset on the Shield. That would be the other, perhaps easier option than digging through the menus. But then, before you go and get the Apple TV Plus app, manually set your NVIDIA Shield to 23.976 hertz output, then go get the Apple TV Plus app. And it should work. I have mine working without judder, so I know it's possible. I'm using a C9, so it's not exactly the same LG literally, but it should be very similar. So I know it can work. This is what has worked for other people, is truly wiping every trace of the app off and then manually setting the NVIDIA Shield's frame rate first and then installing the app. That will mean that your menus are going in 23.976 hertz and you're dealing with that, but to me that's preferable than judder in the video itself. So while Tom is sitting back down, let's hop on to Jason. Jason says the time has come to start planning his basement home theater renovation. The room is about 13 feet wide and 26.5 feet long and 7 feet 9 inches high. I've just begun Jason's. Tom is back.
See that.
So I've said the size and you can start over here.
I see. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Decided to get some coffee while I was there too. So at the back, there's a bar, an opening that does not have a door at the moment. There's a soffit running along the left wall and a fireplace in the middle of the right wall. The front wall has a soffit and bulkheads on either side, creating a sort of nook area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So there's basically, it looks like somebody took the doors off a closet and he shoved his
Sure,
TV in there. Like a closet with two large sliding doors, that
Right.
whatever. So, which is exactly where I have all my equipment. Because I did have like the bifold doors. I took the bifold doors off and put them outside, thinking that would be safe, and then didn't realize that Florida humidity would absolutely destroy them in a matter of minutes. So they died. The soffit's concealed ducting, and the way things are now, there's an angled portion in the front left corner that's right up against the duct inside. So like the front left, right? Front left
corner, yeah.
If you're scanning your eyes from the center of the wall to right near the ceiling, the center of the wall to the left, there's like the corner is cut. It looks like it's angled across, and inside that little cutout cut into the room is the duct that's inside there. So I think he's telling us that so that we know he can't just start drilling into that.
That's right.
The front wall is an exterior wall. The current ceiling is a drop tile ceiling with acoustic ceiling tiles. Sound definitely leaks upstairs the way things are now, but he doesn't want to do a major renovation. New carpet, new lighting, and painting will all take place. He'd be fine with some light construction, but nothing major. So, are those windows next on either side of that? What is that? Is that medicine cabinets?
I really don't. Maybe it's panel access or something. Like I honestly
strange.
don't know.
So like inside the closet where I'm calling it the closet, the area in which his TV, there's a little stand. The center is on the ground in front of the stand. To the left of the stand in the corner is in the corner of the closet area is a subwoofer. The front left and right flank the TV, but
they're right in front of the bulkheads, the vertical
bulkheads. So they're outside the closet on either side, so they're nice and wide, but on the interior left and right wall of the closet area where his TV is, there looks to be doors that are the size of a medicine cabinet.
Panel access things.
Yeah,
or something.
I don't know. There's something back there. That's where he keeps all the bodies, I guess. Okay. Just to test things out, he put his old plasma TV in the nook at the front of the room and set up a 5.1 speaker system using Polk RTI speakers and an SVS PB1000 sub, which I kind of described where everything is. He'll be getting all new equipment once the theater's built, but that's a whole set of questions for another time. He also had an Epson 1060 projector on hand that he's used for backyard movie nights, so he picked up a cheap pull-down screen, 120 inches, just to figure out what field of view he really likes.
I love that. You did that.
He mounted this in front of the little crazy nook thingy kind of thing, and then on the wall there, but it doesn't go into that little weird corner, and then pulled it down in front of the TV with the speaker being on the ground in front of the whatever the cabinet thing is, the TV stand. The speakers on either side kind of works pretty well.
Yeah.
The projector is actually on a stand in between 2 or 3 seats
in the middle of the floor. But this was just to test things. I love it.
All right, so he honestly thinks that 120-inch screen size is pretty much perfect for this room, and through trial and error, he found that he loves a 50-degree field of view, sitting 9.5 feet away, even though this is a low-contrast 1080p projector and less expensive speakers than what he uses upstairs in his living room, along with a 77-inch OLED. The movie-watching experience has been more enjoyable. The sheer size really makes a difference, and even though his basement room isn't treated, just being more of a dedicated space in the living room makes it sound better too, so he's really excited for what the finished room will be like. So I guess this is now all leading up to the questions.
It
is. So ideally he would like the screen to be centered, but that little angle on the soffit on the left front left corner got in the way. He couldn't mount the pull-down screen to the underside of the soffit because the duct seems to be right up against the soffit drywall, and it's made the screen just a bit too low. This is a cheap pull-down, and this cheap pull-down is not the final screen. So what do we think he should do? Should he stick with a pull-down screen? Should he mount it farther forward so that it's in front of that little soffit angle? He's heard us talk about false walls before, but he's not really sure how that would work in the situation. What do we say? Dude, I would straight up get a fixed frame screen that is acoustically transparent, or like just exactly what you've got. This is like the one time you're going to hear me say 2.35 to 1. I might go a 2.35 to 1 screen because it'll be narrower and wider, basically.
Like shorter. It'll be shorter. But wider.
Short. Not yeah. So height wise, it'll be shorter,
Mm-hmm.
and then it'll be wider. Then you could put it underneath your soffit. You could have it go all the way.
Okay.
Across,
So you're thinking
across that opening.
Yeah. Okay.
And then your movie watching, your CinemaScope stuff, your 2.35 to 1 or 2.4 to 1 will be, have even bigger than the 50-degree field of view, but your 16 by 9 is going to be smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So this might be the one time, and it's more of a space thing than anything else.
Well, and we've heard that before. People who said they've got limited ceiling height,
right.
but to get the width of the field of view, they had to go CinemaScope. And that makes sense. There are times when it's totally going to make sense to me.
The other thing I would say is I would not care one iota that thing was a little bit scooched over to the right.
Oh, okay.
Like if 120 inches is what if you're really enjoying this size, I would just get a fixed frame screen. I would mount. I mean, I don't think you need a pull down here. I would get a fixed.
But are
frame.
we concerned that maybe he does need to get to those panels, whatever they are, those panel openings back in that nook and what you're calling the closet?
He's got enough room to the left side to scooch around if he had to.
In there? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Or underneath.
If
could go underneath.
Yeah, crawl underneath. Okay. All right. Crawl underneath.
You might want to build. Just floor to ceiling on the left side of where the screen's going to be. Just a little bit of a 2x4, basically, just so that it has something to attach.
Just some stick framing. Yeah, because and it could be 24 inch on center. It could be 30 inch on center. To be honest, this isn't a structure at all.
If you decided to do this, I mean, I would honestly consider building a false wall right here where you've got this thing
right
set
in
up.
front of the nook. Like have stick framing that goes across the front of the nook.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're not filling it in. You can still access back there, but you've just got stick framing that goes across the front of the nook. And now you could put a screen on that. Because if we look at where the height of his pull-down screen is, like the top of that screen is basically at the bottom of the soffit. So if you had some stick framing to attach a fixed frame screen to, it could go to the same place. But now, because you have the stick framing inside of this nook area, it could go just below that wonky little corner piece in there, and it could all be centered and be just right.
Right, and then you could put if you got acoustically transparent, which you could do, you don't have to. You could then put the center channel higher, or you could buy another, exact speaker, identical speaker chair, front, left, and right. You could put everything back there if you really wanted to. I don't know if that's going to be wide enough, or have them back out in the room the way that you are, but at least the center channel could be behind there and hidden. Your subwoofer could be back there and hidden. Your receiver and everything could be back there and hidden.
You're hitting all the questions that are coming up.
Okay, well, that's this to me. I'm like, you basically have the framing for a false wall.
That's right.
Already.
Yep.
Just finish it. I mean, you said light construction. This is light construction.
This is about as light as construction gets. Is stick framing that isn't finished with any drywall, and like I say, it can be wide apart because we're not holding anything up besides maybe a thin bezel fixed frame screen. That's not heavy, so it can be 30 inches on. It could be 36 inches on center, to be honest, and have some stick framing back there. And maybe you put some speaker grill cloth across it so that it's got a nice visual appearance. The other bit of light construction I might consider is, can you put a door on that opening at the back? Because he's got a permanent opening at the back next to the little bar area. There's a door to the other part of the room. So there's already one door, but there's a permanent opening that goes to the stairway. So I'm like, that is definitely allowing sound out. So can a door go in there? I would consider that light construction. If you're not DIY at all, you'd probably want to hire somebody to do that. But we're not talking about tearing the room down to put a door in. So that would be
you're just installing it looks like a French door size. Right. You might have to build it out a little bit in order to make that work. But it's a French door. You could do that. Yeah. You could have that done. And then you enclose this room. I think you're going to end up with a lot nicer theater than you thought you were going to end up with because you're trying to work your way around this little bump out that we literally do not care about.
Yep, we're saying put the screen below it.
Question B. He doesn't particularly want in-wall speakers and figures that it makes more sense to position front, left, and right speakers in front of the bulkheads at the front of the room on either side of the screen rather than putting them within the nook, which seems likely to be too narrow. I agree with that.
Agreed.
Like you could, but I don't think you should. So do we agree? And what about the center that could go in the nook, right? So should he get an acoustically transparent screen? I mean, I think that's where I'm leaning.
I kind of like the idea. Plus, you can have like a lot of that nook. You can have some insulation back there, and now you've got yourself a nice big bass trap for super cheap. And then you'd want acoustically transparent screen to make sure that bass trap is actually being able to function.
Right, and I completely agree. The thing is if you said I looked at acoustically transparent screens, they're really expensive or they're too expensive for my tastes, I want to go with a regular screen, I would say okay. I don't think there's nothing wrong with that.
Because you do still have room below the screen to allow air into that nook area.
Yeah. So you could then still do the whole false wall thing. Make sure you use acoustically transparent fabric around the screen.
Yeah.
You can put the center below the screen behind the acoustically transparent fabric and still be hidden. It'll just be low.
Yeah.
If you have
right about where you have it now.
Right. Yeah, the acoustically transparent screen, you could put it up high and have a matching center channel if you wanted to. It's completely up to you. But I think you could do it both ways. And I still think you can make that into a bass trap, even if you don't get an acoustically transparent screen. So you have options here. I think the cleaner look and the, I guess, the higher end option would be to go acoustically transparent, but you do not have to. He says they are a family of 5, and they genuinely have some friends over for movie nights on a regular basis. So given the somewhat narrow width of the room, he figures he needs 2 rows of seats. He does want theater recliners for the front row.
I like theater recliners. I want theater recliners for my theater too. So
this is shaking my head. But he likes the idea of a comfy couch on a riser for the back row. So do we think that makes sense? Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have the width to make super wide seating unless everybody's going to clamber over the back of the seats to get into the front of them. So, yes, that makes sense to me.
He said, and then there's a pool table that was left behind by the previous owners of the house. His wife was thinking that it could go at the back of the room, but with the bar area and then this plan for 2 rows of seats, he's pretty sure there won't be enough room. I don't think so. It doesn't look like it.
No.
If they only had 1 row of seats, it could fit. But there's no way to get enough seats that way, is there? I mean, did he tell us the size? I don't even remember.
I don't think we had the exact dimensions, but I mean,
13 by 26.5 by 7'9". So
and he wants 13,
to be
pretty much
26,
10 feet from the screen. So yeah, you're dealing with, you got 10 feet, but part of that is taken up with the bar. You definitely on pool table, you have to have so much room around a pool table to actually play
ridiculous.
Pool. It's ridiculous. So I would say goodbye to the pool table, at least in this room for sure.
Violet, sit down.
That's Tom's dog. For anyone who isn't familiar.
She let herself into this room, so now she's stuck here. Okay, when I left to go get more coffee.
But yeah, I kind of like the idea of, like 3 theater recliners. I'd probably go for like a theater recliner couch with an armless in the middle so that you're not, restricting yourself that way, but it still has its own independent recline and independent back seat cushions, which Tom hates.
I would 100% sell that pool table if you can.
Right.
I mean, I know getting them in and out is like a deal, but you don't make it your deal. You're like, you must transport this and, make an offer for this pool table and take some pictures and have it shipped out.
Sure.
I would use it to finance the room. I mean, they're expensive.
Yeah, but that's, the front 3 seats that way, and then absolutely couch on a riser. Sounds great to me.
Yeah. So he says he isn't fussy about the surround back speakers. And again, with the bar and large opening in the back, is there any point to trying to plan for them and add them? Let me scroll back. This picture
surround backs? No. Don't do surround backs in here.
I don't think so. Oh, yeah, there's a whole bar back there. I didn't even notice that. Yeah.
In this scenario...
I think 5 point... Just like the other guy, right?
Yeah.
5 point... 2.4 is what I think you should go for. I think you have the surround, 2 sets of side surrounds.
Okay.
You have Atmos speakers on the ceiling or in the ceiling, depending on how you want them, flanking, the little bit in front of the front row, a little bit behind the back row. You're done. Yep. I think that's it. I think that's how this works. And you have a drop tile ceiling anyways. You can move those dang things around. Just put extra, because you're just installing them in that panel, right? It's a drop tile ceiling. So if you're like, I don't really like it right there, plunk, there it goes. It goes to the next one. Just make sure you have enough wire. I got to scroll back there.
I'm on board with that. Yep. I think we're
up to. Yeah. So the fireplace won't be used at all, but it seems like it might be a way for be in the way for where surround speakers should go. He plans to install 4 in-ceiling speakers for Atmos, plus at least 2 subs. So how would we approach surround speaker placement? God dang it, I gotta scroll back.
So the height of the fireplace does not look so high to me that
I think that you've got a perfect shelf for a surround speaker right there.
As far surround speaker on that side.
I think you put one at the front of the to the left of the
fireplace,
and then one to the right of the fireplace, and that probably is exactly where they're going to end up going anyway. So
for the seating rows, yep.
I kind of like it.
And then the left wall is a blank wall, so you wall mount the matching surround speakers over there. You want your surround speakers to be a little bit elevated. You're going to have a 3-row and a 4-row of seats, and you want a clear line of sight to everybody's head. So having it a little bit elevated, I think the height of the fireplace is just about right, to be frank.
All right. Where do we think the gear rack should go? In the nook?
In the nook. Okay. Absolutely in the nook. Yep.
He isn't crazy about the look of the current ceiling, but without major construction, what do we think we should do? I think you should keep it and just get different. If you don't like the way it looks, then get different stuff up there.
Different
it would be nice if the soundproofing to upstairs were better, but you understand that's going to be, that going for full soundproofing would be a major undertaking, so it isn't the highest priority. Could he just paint the existing ceiling tiles to make them look No.
Don't do that. That would destroy their current acoustic properties if you did that.
You have to buy new ones. Yes, you have to buy new ones.
If you want to change the look.
And if you want a darker ceiling or you want a completely different color ceiling, you will have to also change the bars or the structure that holds everything up there.
Like his current one, it looks like it's one of the hidden bar versions. So those would actually be like if you could pull down those ceiling tiles, they'd have a groove in it where the T-bar actually goes in to hold them. So you end up with this. You don't see the T-bars in the current one, but you can get get different style tiles. Now the thing is, the different style tiles installed is not going to improve your soundproofing condition. No. And even if you pull down the ceiling that's there currently, even just one tile and have a look up there, if there's no insulation, adding insulation to the ceiling joist bays, it doesn't do a ton soundproofing wise of stopping sound from getting upstairs.
Not going to hurt.
It's not going to hurt, and some of the voices would be a bit more muffled, but it's not going to do anything to the bass doing that. But honestly, I think most of the sound leaking upstairs is coming from you not having a door, because that goes right to your stairwell. I think if you're going to do anything and spend any money here, it's on installing a door at the back of this room. I think that's going to make the bigger difference. And then maybe you consider insulating the ceiling joist bays, because that's not going to be crazy expensive.
I would do that anyways. I would definitely do that anyways, just for in-room acoustics more than anything else. Now, you could, if there's already drywall underneath that drop tile ceiling, you could install a second layer of drywall, or you can install drywall period, and then just put insulation between the drop tile and the
But I think part of the reason is this is a basement, so the drop tile is probably there, so you have access to things that are above the ceiling, and I wouldn't want to take that away. I definitely wouldn't want to take that away.
That's why I said if there is drywall up there already, so you could put a second layer. As mentioned, the equipment questions will come later, but just so he has a rough idea in mind, since he loves plasma and now OLED, would we say the JVC NX5 probably makes the most sense as his choice of projector? He'll have total light control in this room.
Yes, and yes.
Yeah, JVC is kind of the way to go if that's what you're going to go for the projector. So,
absolutely.
It's gonna be a nice room when you finish it off. We're not actually. Usually, I'm like, it's just all kind of expensive. You can get away with doing this for fairly cheap if you can get solid core doors for the back. That would be nice, but it might not be aesthetically as what you want. You may want to have glass or something see-through. French doors for back there, which would be fine. Just when you go shopping for the glass door or for the door itself, I would grab it and shake it.
But honestly, any doors, even hollow core doors, will make a difference, in terms of the sound going upstairs. It's not going to be soundproof. It's not going to be silent, but it will improve things. Even when you go into just a regular bedroom that has a hollow core door and you close the door, things don't become silent, but they are quieter than when the door is wide open, right? So same situation here.
Let's skip this long one from Dan because we're basically running up against time here.
I was just kind of thinking that it's the YouTube TV thing that we just talked about, so it kind of fits in with a news.
Okay, we can do it real quick.
Yeah, let's just do that one, and that'll probably be the end of it.
And Brandon's is also like
let's try. I'm happy to try.
Very easy one. Dan subscribes to YouTube TV. When all of the Disney-owned channels got pulled for one day, he and his wife started regretting having cut the cord. They work long, hard days. They apparently dig ditches.
Yep.
Who knew?
Coal miners. Maybe they are coal miners. People can be.
They could be. That happens. There's people
Somebody
still do
is.
this.
It's a job.
It's a job that some people do.
Absolutely.
My entitled children who act like they're believe me, have not worked
Dan and his
day in their
wife
lives.
are healthcare workers. Those would be long,
That's even
hard
worse.
days.
Anyways, when they get home, they just want to relax and watch some TV, keeping track of which channels are available which channels are available where shouldn't be another job on top of everything else. What was worse was that even stuff they had previously recorded via YouTube TV's online DVR servers couldn't be accessed during the channel outage.
Yeah.
So he completely agrees that we've basically come right back around to just having cable TV, but via the internet now. But what's to be done about it? There's no guarantee that some other live TV streaming service isn't going to have a contract dispute, right? But going back to cable would mean the ridiculous equipment rental fees that they wanted to get away from, and also to terrible resolutions and
right.
lack of surround sound. It seems to really bother me. Things worked out this time, but what do we think is the best way to get live TV with the lowest possibilities of hassles? Just subscribe to everything. So that's what you gotta do.
Right.
Just subscribe to all the
If
services.
one of them doesn't have it, the other one will.
Just do them all. Just pay it $1,000 a month. I mean, that's literally the only real solution. I'm sure that's what Bezos does.
Sure.
So
I mean, I can't even say put up an over-the-air antenna because that has hassles. That definitely has hassles associated with it. It is not hassle-free. I don't have a great solution because,
No, I don't either.
there is not a single subscription service, be it cable or be it an online streaming version, that is immune from having contract disputes. Until Disney literally owns every studio, which might happen at some point, but we're not quite there yet. Until that day, there are going to be a variety of content makers and offering content from different studios, and that means you've got these individual contracts and licenses, and it happens all the time. We see it from, it's not every cable provider at the same time, but we've seen every cable provider have these disputes, and now we're seeing it again with the streaming live TV services. So I can't point you to anybody who's going to be immune. I think we just kind of live with it. Like we when cable was the only option, well, we lived with it, and there were things we didn't like about it. In fact, there were so many things we didn't like about it that when the online streaming version came along, we're like, yeah, I'm hopping over there. It costs less, there's more features, the quality's better, but now we're running into the prices creeping up. They're running into the same problems that cable used to have. So I think we just kind of live with it. I don't have a great solution.
Right.
Torrent everything? We can't say that. We're not allowed to say that.
Also,
that has hassles.
That does have hassles. So he's owned both receivers and separates over the years. It's always seemed to him that the separates sounded better. He's never had one of the monster flagship receivers, though. And when he's looked at reviews or claims of the manufacturers themselves, they always say that separates will still sound best because they cost more and they want you to buy them. He gets that if your room is small and your speakers are easy to drive, the power needed for full reference volume isn't that much, and any decent receiver can get you there. But he's seen measurements of separate systems where the noise floor is lower, and it's always mentioned that having the power supply separated is an important distinction. So if utmost performance is the priority and price and bang for the buck aren't the biggest concerns, is there truly no difference at all between receivers and separates, or is it just that we think the difference typically isn't big enough to justify the price because if there's any performance improvement at all, he's willing to pay? Well, you can literally go to that whatever website that Rob mentions all the time that measures all the noise floors and stuff like that and find receivers that measure better than as preamps, better than dedicated separate
Audio
preamps.
Science Review, yep.
So you can literally find receivers that measure better than separates. So
as preamps. As preamplifiers.
So on its face, it is untrue that separates are universally or even typically better sounding than receivers.
Well, I think what's interesting here is, separates being at least two separate boxes have two parts to them. They've got the preamplifier section and the amplifier section. And there is no contestation that if you want the lowest noise floor possible, it's probably going to be from an external amplifier. If you want 200 watts per channel, 250, 300 watts per channel, all channels driven simultaneously, even the monster receivers are not going to be able to deliver that to you. Whereas you can definitely get separate amplifiers that can. So to me, the value in separates is in the amplifier section. And I can make an argument for that. If you have a large enough room, if you have speakers that are difficult enough to drive, that if you're sitting far enough away.
All the time around
that's just math. That's just math. But where we typically struggle is saying that, and it's in particular for like an 11 channel setup, that it's worth going for the separate pre-pro, because you can get these AV receivers with very clean preamplifier outputs, and they have all the same features, very clean preamplifier outputs, and they cost less just from economies of scale. Because typically the similarly featured pre-pro is the same thing, but because they make so many fewer of them and sell so many fewer of them, they charge a higher price. It's just an economy of scale thing. Where a separate pre-pro can definitely have an unquestionable advantage over a receiver is in our 16-channel setups, in our 9.1.6 setups, or beyond 9.1.6. We don't have receivers that can do that. I mean, there's the Anthem, right? The MRX 1140, that can go all the way up to 11 speakers, but you have to add an external amplifier to get there. So, I mean, our options for 9.1.6 receivers are really, really limited, whereas, we've got several pre-pros that can do that. That's just a feature difference, and if that's what you're doing in your system, you've got to go that way, more or less. If you want to do what a Trinov can do, you got to get a Trinov. There's no other game in town. So,
but that has nothing to do with whether they sound, though, which is what he's asking.
So it's, if we're in the realm of an 11 speaker setup, or a 9 speaker setup for sure, or 7 speaker setup, obviously, and we've done the math and it makes sense to have an external amplifier, because there's absolutely cases where that's just what we need. That's how many watts we need. Then we're going to say you are not giving up any performance with the very good, very clean pre-outs of the AV receiver version that still has all the features but just charges a lower price. That's where we end up. So because most of the questions we're getting here are in that sort of price range, and it's people looking for a 9 or 11 speaker setups,
right? But
they're just like, I'm kind of tempted, or I already have an amp, and so I'm tempted to get, because I want to use the XLR outputs, right? That's usually what it boils down to. I want to use the XLR connections. I mean,
I got in a Reddit fight that wasn't really a fight. I got in a little bit of a Reddit argument with somebody over XLR inputs, and it's like, they're like, oh, I've got this subwoofer or receive or amp or something with XLR inputs. How do I connect it to what kind of receiver or what kind of pre-pro do I need to get? And everybody's making these suggestions. Or my response was, or you can just buy a receiver with an XLR to RCA cable and just plug it in.
Sure. Yes.
And they're like, but that would destroy the benefits of having XLR. I'm like, so is a cable like 300 feet long?
Right,
I mean, like what exactly are you getting from your XLR input that you think you need to have to spend thousands more?
It does have the little clippy, the little physical clippy that it clips in. It's not just pure friction fit. It's a nice satisfying click when it goes in. But
whatever.
I think the other scenario, of course, is, because this happens all the time on this podcast, the room is 12 feet by 15 feet. They're using Klipsch speakers.
Right.
And they say, But if I get separates, if I get a dedicated pre-pro and a separate 200 watt per channel amplifier, isn't it just going to sound better? It costs more. It must sound better. And all day long we're saying, no, just get a receiver. You're not going to hear the difference in that scenario. So I mean, it sounded like, who are we talking to here? Dan.
I don't remember.
It sounded like he's already on board with that. He's like, small room, easy to drive speakers.
Yeah.
He's on board with that. So I don't think that was totally where he was asking. But I mean, we do need to stress that nuance, because some people are going to hear, the AVRant guys, they always just say, just get a receiver. I'm like, there's the two scenarios where sometimes people want to get a dedicated pre-pro, where we say just get a receiver. It's the small room and easy to drive speakers. Just get a receiver and stop, because you don't even need the separate amplifier. The second scenario is you actually can justify mathematically getting the separate amplifier, but you only want to do 9 or 11 speakers, or even just 7 speakers. So just get the AV receiver version with the clean pre-outs and save the money. When you get to the final stage of, I want to go beyond 9.1.6.
Yeah, I've got a 26 by 50 foot room, and I've got seven rows of seats. Yeah, you're gonna need the processor that could do more speakers than 11.
That's right. So we get there.
That's right. And there's times. Times. All right, who do we have left, Rob?
Okay, we have Brandon. I thought we were going to do that, but
no, we're not doing Brandon anymore. You took too long.
Literally, it's a one-word answer.
I know it is. Go ahead. You want to read the question?
Yeah. If you physically turn your subwoofer around 180 degrees, do you need to rerun Audyssey? No. You don't really, because you can just change the polarity in the settings menu.
You could literally flip. You could flip the
polarity switch?
the phase knob all the way to the other
180.
side, and then you're basically right back to where you were.
Or if all you have
Just
is a
don't-
polarity switch, you just flick that.
Just don't put the driver so it's firing like it's physically hitting the wall.
Hitting the wall, that would be a bad thing. But yeah, otherwise, no, just flip the polarity switch either in the receiver or on the subwoofer itself, or if you only have a phase knob, turn it to 180, and you're
Or
perfectly
spend
fine.
$200 on the Audyssey MultEQ-X,
$200 solution.
and then so that you can press the button on the Windows interface.
You take
and
more
if you have a
measurements and
Mac, you're going to
exclude the
need to
old
be.
ones.
If you have a Mac, you're going to need to have an Intel processor inside your Mac, and you need to be running Windows through whatever they call it, Boot Camp or whatever.
Right.
That's the only way you can do it with a Mac right now.
Yeah,
because
Windows only.
Mac people don't like room correction. Everybody knows that.
So with that done, now we have left on the list Daz, Chad, and scrolling past Chad's list of questions, David. I'm pretty sure that was everybody, and that is everybody. So you three gentlemen are on the list for, I guess it'll be our New Year's Eve episode.
I guess so. Yeah. Happy New Year coming up to all you
That's
people.
right. Merry Christmas once again, because this should be when this is coming up.
That's right. This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. We want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Chad for going to avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, as well as our 137 patrons over at patreon.com.
Yes, indeed, Chad. Thank you so much for the PayPal donation. We really do appreciate that financial support.
We also want to thank our listeners who sent us message of support for keeping the podcast going during the pandemic. James, Julian, Shawn, Jason, Dan, Chad, Gurinder, and David. Thank you for thanking us.
Did I forget the Patreon thing? I forgot the Patreon thing. Patreon.com/AVRant podcast. If you'd like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation, 137 patrons there, so thank you as well. And then James, Julian, Shawn, Jason, Dan, Chad, Gurinder, and David. Thank you all so much for those notes of gratitude and encouragement. We definitely do appreciate those. They are needed sometimes. Sometimes not all the messages are so nice, although almost all the ones we get are. But once in a while on YouTube, they're not so nice. So there you go. It's very nice to know that people do listen and enjoy, and even the entire 2 hours, sometimes while they're driving far too much. So that is really nice. And happy holidays to everybody. Hope everybody's holiday season goes very, very nicely. Merry Christmas, everybody. And yeah, there we go. We're coming up to the end of 2021. Onward, hopefully, to better things in 2022. Yes, there we go. Fingers crossed.
For AVRant, I'm Tom Mantry.
And I'm Rob H. Now stay in and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.